The entire VIP lounge at JFK Airport falls silent when security drags a young bride in a wrinkled wedding dress toward the exit, accusing her of using a fake elite access card. Evelyn Carter's face burns with humiliation as strangers stare at her like a criminal. Then a cold voice cuts through the chaos. "Take your hands off my wife." Every head turns. Stepping into the lounge is Kang Min-jae, the infamous Korean Mafia boss rumored to control one of the deadliest syndicates between Seoul and New York. What happens next will change everything. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story reaches. Now let me take you back to where it all began. 3 weeks before the airport incident, Evelyn Carter sat in her childhood bedroom surrounded by half-packed boxes and tried to remember the last time she'd felt like something other than a burden. The afternoon light slanted through dusty blinds, cutting across water-stained walls and faded posters from a life that felt like someone else's memory. Downstairs, her mother's voice cracked through another phone call with creditors. Her father hadn't spoken in 2 days. The scandal had destroyed them in under 6 months. Corporate fraud charges, embezzlement accusations, media coverage that turned their family name into a punchline. Her father's business partners had vanished the moment the indictments came down, leaving behind nothing but debt collectors and lawyers who billed by the minute. Evelyn had dropped out of Columbia halfway through her junior year because there was no money left for tuition. She'd sold her laptop, her jewelry, everything that might buy her family another week. It wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough. She pressed her palms against her eyes until stars burst behind her eyelids. 21 years old and already drowning. No degree, no job prospects, no future that didn't involve watching her parents lose the house they'd owned for 30 years. Her mother's footsteps creaked on the stairs. Evelyn knew that particular rhythm, slow, hesitant, carrying bad news like a weight that got heavier with each step. Evelyn. Her mother stood in the doorway, gripping the frame like she might collapse without it. "Your father and I need to talk to you." The living room felt smaller than Evelyn remembered. Her father sat on the couch with his shoulders hunched forward, staring at his hands like they belonged to a stranger. He'd aged a decade in 6 months. Gray stubble covered his jaw. His shirt hung loose where it used to strain against his chest. Her mother sat beside him, fingers twisted together in her lap. "There's something we should have told you years ago," her father said. His voice came out rough and unfamiliar. "Before you were born, I made an agreement with a business associate in Seoul, a marriage pact between our families." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "What?" "The Kong family helped us when we had nothing. They invested in my first company, gave us connections we couldn't have built alone. In exchange, I promised that when you came of age, you would marry their son." The words didn't make sense. They sounded like dialogue from a bad historical drama, not something that happened to real people in New York City in the 21st century. "You promised me to a stranger?" "It was supposed to be symbolic," her mother said quickly. "A gesture of respect between families. We never thought we'd be desperate enough to actually honor it," her father finished. His eyes finally met Evelyn's, and she saw something worse than grief in them. She saw defeat. "But the Kang family is willing to forgive all our debts and restore your mother's medical coverage if you agree to the marriage." Evelyn's breath came short and sharp. "Medical coverage?" Her mother looked away. The cancer came back. The room tilted. Evelyn gripped the armrest of her chair, fingers digging into worn fabric. "When?" 2 months ago, stage 3. We didn't want to worry you when you were dealing with school and—" "You didn't want to worry me?" Evelyn's voice cracked. "You've been sick for 2 months and you didn't tell me?" "There was nothing you could do," her father said. "There's nothing any of us can do without money. The treatment costs—" He stopped, jaw working. "The Kong family offered to cover everything, all of it. Your mother's care, the house, the legal fees, everything. In exchange for me." Silence filled the spaces between them like poison gas. Evelyn stood up, walked to the window, stared out at the street where she'd learned to ride a bike, where she'd kissed her first boyfriend, where she'd dreamed about a future that looked nothing like this. "Who is he?" she asked. "This son I'm supposed to marry." Her parents exchanged a look that made Evelyn's skin crawl. "His name is Kang Min-jae," her father said carefully. "He's the current head of the Kang family organization." What kind of organization? Another pause. Longer this time. The kind that operates outside traditional business structures, her mother said. Evelyn turned around. Stop dancing around it. What does that mean? He runs a criminal syndicate, her father said flatly. Import-export operations, real estate, investment portfolios. Some of it legal, most of it not. The air left Evelyn's lungs. You want me to marry a criminal? We're not asking you to do anything, her mother said. This is your choice. We would never force you. But if I say no, Mom dies and we lose everything. Neither of them answered. They didn't have to. Evelyn sank back into the chair. Her whole body felt numb, like she was watching this conversation happen to someone else. Have you met him? This Kang Min Jai? Once, her father said. Years ago, when you were a baby. He was just a teenager then. And now? Now he's one of the most powerful men in the Korean underworld. He controls operations across 3 continents. His family has connections in government, finance, law enforcement. People don't cross him twice. Because he kills them? Her father's silence was answer enough. Evelyn laughed, high and sharp and wrong. This is insane. This is actually insane. You're telling me I have to marry some mafia boss I've never met or watch Mom die? There might be other options, her mother started. There aren't, Evelyn said. She could see it in their faces, in the way they couldn't quite look at her. You've already exhausted every other option. This is the last play. You don't have to decide right now, her father said. When do I have to decide? They're expecting an answer by the end of the week. 4 days. Evelyn had 4 days to choose between selling herself to a stranger and watching her mother's cancer eat her alive. She stood up. I need to be alone. That night, Evelyn lay in bed and tried to imagine what kind of man would agree to this arrangement. What kind of person bought a wife like she was livestock? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Miss Carter. My name is Park Ji-hoon. I work for Mr. Kang. He would like to meet with you before you make your decision. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., Lexington Hotel. Private dining room. No pressure, just a conversation. Evelyn stared at the message until her eyes burned. Her hands shook as she typed back. I'll be there. The Lexington Hotel occupied an entire city block in Midtown Manhattan, all gleaming glass and old money. Evelyn had walked past it 100 times, but never imagined she'd step inside. The lobby made her feel like a stain. Women in designer clothes, men in suits that cost more than her family's mortgage, everyone moving with the easy confidence of people who'd never worried about money in their lives. A man in a black suit approached her immediately. Miss Carter? She nodded. This way, please. He led her through the lobby to a private elevator that required a key card to operate. They rode up in silence. Evelyn caught her reflection in the polished brass doors. Cheap dress from Target, makeup she'd applied with shaking hands, hair that refused to cooperate. She looked exactly like what she was, a broke college dropout trying to pretend she belonged here. The elevator opened onto a hallway with exactly 1 door. The man knocked twice, then stepped aside. Go ahead. Evelyn's pulse hammered in her throat as she pushed the door open. The private dining room was smaller than she expected, decorated in dark wood and soft lighting that made everything feel intimate and vaguely threatening. A table was set for 2, but only one man stood near the window. He turned when she entered. Evelyn stopped breathing. Kang Min Jae was not what she'd expected. She'd pictured someone older, scarred, ugly in the way movie villains were ugly. Instead, he looked like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit so perfectly tailored it could have been painted on. His face was angular and sharp, beautiful in a way that felt dangerous. Black hair swept back from his forehead, dark eyes that tracked her movement like a predator watching prey, and tattoos. Even in the expensive suit, she could see them crawling up from his collar, dark ink against golden skin. Miss Carter. His voice was deep, accented, controlled. Thank you for coming. Evelyn forced herself to move into the room. I don't have much choice. Something flickered across his expression. Amusement, maybe, or respect. You always have a choice. That's why I wanted to meet you. He gestured to the table. Evelyn sat, mostly because her legs didn't feel stable enough to keep standing. Min-jae took the chair across from her, movements precise and economical. Would you like something to drink? He asked. Water. He poured from a crystal pitcher, slid the glass across to her. Their fingers didn't touch, but Evelyn felt the almost contact like static electricity. I'm not going to waste your time with small talk, Min-jae said. You know why you're here. Your family made a promise to mine 21 years ago. I'm prepared to honor that agreement if you consent. Consent, Evelyn repeated, like I have any real power in this situation. You have all the power. Min-jae leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. I won't force you into anything. If you say no, I'll walk away. Your family's debts will remain, but I won't pursue the marriage contract. And my mother dies. That's not my doing. No, but it's convenient for you, isn't it? Evelyn heard the anger in her voice and didn't try to hide it. You get a wife who's too desperate to say no. Min-jae's expression didn't change. I could have any woman I want without resorting to extortion. Then why this? Why me? Because I need a wife who understands what this arrangement actually is. Not a love story, not a fairy tale. A business transaction between two people who benefit from the partnership. What do you get out of it? Legitimacy? Stability? An heir? He said it like he was listing quarterly projections. My family expects me to marry someone appropriate. You're educated, intelligent, from a respectable background. You meet the requirements. I'm also broke and desperate, which means you won't have romantic delusions about what this marriage means. Min-jae tilted his head slightly. I'm not a good man, Miss Carter. I've done things that would make you sick. I will continue to do those things because that's who I am. I'm offering you protection, financial security, and freedom to live your life. But I can't offer you love. The honesty was somehow worse than if he'd lied. What if I fall in love with someone else? Then be discreet. Evelyn's hands trembled around her water glass. You'd let me cheat on you? I'm not interested in controlling who you feel affection for. I'm interested in maintaining the appearance of a stable marriage. What you do privately is your business, as long as it doesn't create public scandal. And you? Will you be discreet with your affairs? Something cold flashed in Min-jae's eyes. I don't have affairs. Why not? Because I don't trust people enough to let them that close. The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Evelyn found herself studying him more carefully. The perfect posture that suggested military training, the controlled breathing, the way his hands rested on the table like weapons waiting to be deployed. What happens if I say yes? She asked. We marry within the month. You move into my residence in Manhattan. Your mother receives the best cancer treatment available. Your family's debts disappear. You'll have access to credit cards, bank accounts, security, anything you need. I'd be your property. You'd be my wife. There's a difference. Is there? Min-jae leaned forward, elbows on the table. I won't touch you unless you want me to. I won't control what you wear, where you go, who you see. You can finish your degree if you want. Get a job. Pursue whatever interests you have. The only requirements are that you appear at family functions when necessary, and that you're faithful enough not to embarrass me publicly. That's it? That's it. It sounded too good to be true. People like Min-jae didn't make deals without hidden clauses. What aren't you telling me? His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You're smarter than your parents gave you credit for. Answer the question. My world is dangerous. People will try to hurt you to get to me. You'll need security, restrictions on your movement, careful vetting of anyone you interact with. Your life won't be normal. My life stopped being normal 6 months ago. This is different. This is permanent. Evelyn met his eyes, dark, unreadable, holding secrets that probably included body counts. If I marry you, will my mother survive? I'll make sure she has access to the best oncologists in the world. That's not what I asked. I can't control cancer, Miss Carter, but I can control money, and money buys time. Whether that's enough time, he spread his hands, that's up to forces neither of us can negotiate with. The brutal honesty should have repulsed her. Instead, she found it almost refreshing. No false promises, no empty reassurances. I need to think about it, Evelyn said. Take the time you need. She stood up. Min-jae rose with her, pulling a business card from his jacket. My direct number, if you have questions, or if you decide. Their fingers brushed as she took the card. The contact lasted less than a second, but Evelyn felt it down to her bones. Heat and danger, and something else she couldn't name. "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked. Min-jae's expression softened just slightly, like ice beginning to crack. "Because you didn't ask for any of this, and because I remember what it feels like to have no choices." Then he stepped back, putting distance between them that felt like a wall slamming down. "My driver will take you home." Evelyn spent 3 days trying to find another option. She called every charity, every organization, every contact her family still had. The answer was always the same: no money, no help, no miracles available for people who'd already lost everything. Her mother's next round of chemo was scheduled for Friday. Without insurance, it would cost $40,000 they didn't have. On Thursday night, Evelyn sat in her bedroom with Min-jae's business card and her phone. She thought about her mother's pale face, her father's broken posture, the house they'd lose, the future that was already gone. She thought about Min-jae's dark eyes and brutal honesty, and the tattoos that marked him as something other than safe. She thought about having no choices left at all. Her hands barely shook as she dialed. He answered on the first ring. "Miss Carter." "I'll do it," Evelyn said. "I'll marry you." Silence. Then, "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway. I'll have my attorney contact you tomorrow with the prenuptial agreement." "There's a prenup?" "To protect you as much as me. Read it carefully. If there's anything you want changed, we'll negotiate." Evelyn laughed, sharp and bitter. "Negotiate? Like I have any leverage. You have more than you think." His voice dropped lower. "I'll make this as painless as possible. It's a marriage, not a medical procedure. In my experience, the distinction isn't always clear." She wanted to ask what that meant. What kind of history left a man this cold and controlled? But that required a level of intimacy she wasn't ready for. "When?" she asked. 2 weeks. Small ceremony. Immediate family only. And then? And then you become Mrs. Kang Min-jae. For better or worse?" Evelyn closed her eyes. "Mostly worse, I'm guessing." "Probably." He paused. "Get some sleep, Evelyn. Everything changes tomorrow." He hung up before she could respond. Evelyn sat in the dark and tried to remember what hope felt like. The prenup arrived the next morning via courier, a leather portfolio containing 40 pages of legal language that basically said Evelyn would leave the marriage with exactly what she brought into it: nothing. But her mother's medical care was guaranteed regardless of what happened between them, and there was a trust fund established in her name that she'd have access to after 3 years. She signed without reading past page 10. What was the point? She'd already sold herself. The paperwork was just formality. Her mother cried when Evelyn told her. Her father couldn't look at her. Neither of them said thank you, maybe because they knew the words were too small for what they were asking her to sacrifice. The wedding was scheduled for the following Saturday at a private estate in Westchester. Min-jae's family arranged everything: the dress, the flowers, the officiant. Evelyn was measured and fitted like a doll being prepared for display. The dress arrived the day before the wedding. It was beautiful, simple, elegant, probably worth more than everything Evelyn had ever owned combined. She hung it in her closet and tried not to think about the fact that she was going to wear it while promising her life to a stranger. Her mother helped her pack. They didn't talk much. What was there to say? "He seems like a decent man," her mother offered quietly. Evelyn folded a sweater she probably wouldn't need. "He's a criminal. So were half the men who built this city. That doesn't make it right." "No, but it makes it survivable." Her mother's hand stilled on a stack of books. "I know what we're asking you to do. I know it's not fair." "Then why are you letting me do it?" "Because I'm selfish." Her mother's voice cracked. "Because I want to live. Because your father and I already destroyed our own lives, and I can't stand the thought of destroying yours too. But apparently that's exactly what we're doing, and I hate myself for it, but not enough to tell you to walk away." Evelyn turned to find her mother crying silently, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." They held each other in the wreckage of Evelyn's childhood bedroom and cried until there was nothing left. The wedding day dawned gray and cold. Evelyn woke up in a hotel room provided by Min-jae's people, stared at the ceiling, and tried to remember how to breathe. A woman named Helen arrived at 9 to do her hair and makeup. She worked in efficient silence, transforming Evelyn into someone who looked calm and beautiful and nothing like the terrified girl underneath. The dress fit perfectly. Of course it did. Minjae's people didn't make mistakes. At 11:30, a car arrived to take her to the estate. The venue was smaller than she'd expected, a historic mansion with gardens and a small chapel. Evelyn counted maybe 20 people total, Minjae's family and a few business associates, her parents. That was it. No friends, no celebration, just a transaction being finalized. Minjae waited at this altar in a black suit that made him look like sin personified. His expression was unreadable as Evelyn walked down the aisle alone. No father to give her away because how do you give away something that's already been sold? She focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on not tripping, on not running. When she reached the altar, Minjae extended his hand. Evelyn took it. His grip was warm and steady and strong enough to crush her if he wanted to. The officiant started talking. Evelyn heard maybe half of it, something about love and honor and commitment. Words that meant nothing in the context of what they were actually doing. Do you, Evelyn Carter, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Minjae's thumb moved against her palm. Just once, a small circle that might have been meant as reassurance. I do, Evelyn whispered. And do you, Kang Minjae, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was steady, certain, nothing like hers. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Minjae turned to her. For just a second, something flickered in his dark eyes. Hesitation, maybe, or recognition that they were crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Then he leaned in. The kiss was supposed to be quick and formal, a performance for the handful of witnesses. But the moment their lips touched, something shifted. Minjae's hand came up to cup her jaw, gentle and possessive at the same time. His mouth moved against hers with an intensity that stole her breath. Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs. She felt heat bloom in her chest, spreading outward until her whole body hummed with it. When Minjae pulled back, his pupils were dilated, his breathing just slightly uneven. For the first time since they'd met, he looked like a man who'd lost control. The reception was mercifully short. Evelyn smiled through congratulations from people whose names she'd never remember. She ate food she couldn't taste. She stood next to her new husband while photographers documented the transaction. Minjae barely touched her, but she felt his presence like gravity, constant, inescapable, pulling her into orbit around something far more dangerous than she'd anticipated. We're leaving for the airport in 30 minutes, he said quietly during a lull in the forced festivities. Unless you need more time. To do what? Say goodbye. Evelyn looked across the room at her parents. Her mother was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her father stared into his champagne glass like it held answers. No, Evelyn said. I'm ready. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. They changed clothes in separate rooms. Minjae into dark jeans and a black sweater that somehow made him look even more dangerous. Evelyn into travel clothes that felt wrong on her skin. Everything felt wrong now, like she'd stepped into someone else's life and couldn't find her way back. The car to JFK was a sleek black sedan with tinted windows and a driver who didn't speak. Minjae sat beside her in silence, checking his phone occasionally, his face illuminated by the blue glow. Where are we going? Evelyn asked. Maldives. Private resort. We'll be there for 2 weeks. Honeymoon, she said flatly. If you want to call it that. What would you call it? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Evelyn saw something in his expression she couldn't name. A chance to adjust before real life starts. The airport was chaos. Travelers dragging luggage, families saying goodbye, announcements echoing through terminals. Minjae's hand settled on the small of Evelyn's back, guiding her through the crowd with the casual authority of someone used to people moving out of his way. They bypassed the main terminal, heading instead toward a private entrance marked for elite travelers. Minjae produced a black card that got them through security without the usual hassle. The VIP lounge was all leather furniture and muted lighting, populated by business executives and wealthy families who barely glanced up from their phones. Evelyn felt their eyes on her anyway, on her wrinkled dress, her smudged makeup, the way she clearly didn't belong. I need to make a call, Min-jae said. Will you be all right for a few minutes? Evelyn nodded. He disappeared into a private phone booth, leaving her standing alone in a room full of strangers. She found a seat near the window and tried to process the fact that she was married, that the ring on her finger was real, that in 2 weeks she'd be living in Manhattan with a man who terrified and confused her in equal measure. Excuse me. Evelyn looked up to find a woman in an airline uniform standing over her. Yes? I'm going to need to see your access card. My what? Your lounge access card. This is a members-only facility. Heat flooded Evelyn's face. My husband has it. He just stepped away. I'm going to have to ask you to come with me. What? No, I'm waiting for… Ma'am, if you don't have authorization to be in this lounge, you need to leave immediately. Other people were staring now. Evelyn's throat closed up. She tried to stand to explain, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Then security arrived, 2 large men in uniform who treated her like a criminal. Let's go, one of them said, reaching for her arm. I'm telling you, my husband… Sure he is. The guard's grip tightened, fingers digging into her bicep hard enough to bruise. Evelyn's vision blurred. The entire lounge was watching her now, every wealthy traveler staring at the girl in the wrinkled dress being dragged out by security. She heard whispers, saw people pulling out phones. This couldn't be happening. Not today, not after everything else. The guard yanked her toward the exit. Then a voice cut through the chaos like a blade through flesh. Take your hands off my wife. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Every head turned toward the entrance where Kang Min-jae stood with an expression that promised violence. The security guard's face went white. His hand dropped from Evelyn's arm like she'd burned him. Min-jae crossed the lounge in long strides that made people scramble out of his way. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. The barely leashed fury radiating off him was enough. Do you know who I am? He asked the guard quietly. No, sir, Find out. Min-jae's hand settled on Evelyn's shoulder, gentle but claiming. And then explain to your supervisor why you put your hands on my wife. The guard stumbled backward, stammering apologies that Min-jae ignored completely. The lounge manager appeared, face flushed with panic. Mr. Kang, I am so sorry. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Has there? Min-jae's voice could have frozen blood. Because from where I'm standing, your staff just assaulted my wife in front of witnesses. We had no idea she was with you. That shouldn't matter. Each word landed like a physical blow. Every person in this lounge should be treated with respect, regardless of who they're married to. The manager was sweating now. Of course, you're absolutely right. The employee who called security is fired. The guards who touched her are fired. And I want the name of whoever approved their security protocol. Mr. Kang, please, are we clear? Yes, absolutely clear. Min-jae turned to Evelyn, his expression shifting from deadly to concerned in a heartbeat. Are you hurt? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Come on. His hand moved to her waist, supporting her weight as he guided her away from the staring crowd. Let's get you somewhere private. He led her through a door marked staff only, into a hallway, then into a small suite that was clearly reserved for VIPs. The moment the door closed behind them, Evelyn's knees gave out. Min-jae caught her before she could fall, strong arms wrapping around her as she gasped for air that wouldn't come. Breathe, he said quietly. Just breathe. I'm sorry, Evelyn choked out. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to… You didn't do anything wrong. His hand moved in slow circles on her back. They had no right to treat you that way. Everyone was staring. Let them stare. Evelyn pressed her face against his chest, inhaling the scent of expensive cologne and something darker underneath. He was so solid, so steady, like nothing in the world could knock him off balance. Slowly, her breathing evened out. The panic receded. She pulled back, wiping at her eyes. Thank you. Min-jae's jaw was still tight, violence simmering just beneath his controlled exterior. He shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The weight of it felt like armor. Did they hurt you? He asked. Just scared me. His eyes darkened. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Something in his tone made her believe him absolutely. They stood there in the quiet suite, the chaos of the lounge muffled by thick walls, and Evelyn realized with sudden, terrifying clarity exactly what she'd gotten herself into. She'd just married one of the most dangerous men in the world, And somehow, impossibly, he was looking at her like she was the only thing in the room worth protecting. The private jet waiting on the tarmac looked like something out of a billionaire's fever dream. Sleek white exterior with dark windows that promised privacy from the world below. Evelyn followed Min-jae up the stairs, still wrapped in his jacket, her legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. Inside, the cabin was all cream leather and dark wood, more like a luxury apartment than an aircraft. A flight attendant greeted them with practiced smiles that didn't quite reach her eyes when she looked at Evelyn. "We'll be taking off shortly, Mr. Kang," she said. "Can I get you anything?" "Whiskey. Neat." Min-jae turned to Evelyn. "What do you want?" "Water is fine." The attendant disappeared. Min-jae gestured to one of the oversized seats. "Sit. You look like you're about to collapse." Evelyn sank into the leather, her body finally registering the full weight of everything that had happened in the last 3 hours. Married, humiliated, rescued. She didn't know which one scared her more. Min-jae settled into the seat across from her, close enough that their knees almost touched. He pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly, then set it aside. "What are you doing?" Evelyn asked. "Making sure those security guards never work in New York again?" "That seems excessive." His eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. "They put their hands on you. In my world, that has consequences." "I'm not sure I want to live in your world." "Too late for that now." The brutal honesty stung more than it should have. Evelyn looked away, focusing on the window where ground crew moved around the plane like ants. The flight attendant returned with their drinks. Min-jae took his whiskey, but didn't drink it, just held the glass and watched Evelyn with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You should sleep," he said. "It's a long flight." "I'm not tired." "You're exhausted. I can see it." "Stop telling me how I feel." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "There she is." "What?" "The woman who looked to me in the eye during our first meeting and called me out for exploiting her desperation. I was starting to think she'd disappeared." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Maybe she's just tired of being told what to do." "Then stop doing what other people tell you." Min-jae leaned back in his seat, one hand draped casually over the armrest. "You're my wife now. That means you have power whether you realize it or not." "Power," Evelyn repeated. "I just got dragged through an airport lounge like a criminal. Because they didn't know who you were. That won't happen again. Because you'll destroy anyone who looks at me wrong?" "Yes." The single word hung between them, simple and terrifying. The plane began to taxi. Evelyn gripped the armrests as they accelerated down the runway, her stomach dropping as wheels left pavement. She'd only flown twice before, once to visit her grandmother in Florida, once on a college trip she'd saved for months to afford. Private jets weren't part of her world, except now they were. Once they reached cruising altitude, Min-jae unbuckled his seatbelt and stood. "Come on, I'll show you where you can rest." He led her toward the back of the plane, past a small galley and a bathroom that looked nicer than her childhood bedroom. At the rear was an actual bedroom, king-sized bed, blackout curtains, furniture that was somehow bolted down but looked like it belonged in a 5-star hotel. "This is insane," Evelyn said. "It's practical. I spend a lot of time traveling." "Normal people use airport hotels." "I'm not normal people." Min-jae pulled back the covers on the bed. "Sleep. We still have 14 hours ahead of us." "Where will you be?" "Out there. I have work to do." He started to leave. Evelyn's hand shot out before she could stop herself, fingers catching his wrist. Min-jae froze, looking down at where she touched him like he couldn't quite believe it was happening. "Thank you," Evelyn said quietly, "for what you did back there, in the lounge." His expression softened just slightly, like ice beginning to crack. "No one touches what's mine. Remember that." Then he pulled away gently and left, closing the door behind him. Evelyn stood alone in the bedroom and tried to ignore the way her heart was hammering against her ribs. She didn't sleep. Not really. She lay on the bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling while the jet engines hummed beneath her, carrying her farther and farther from everything she'd ever known. Around hour 6, hunger drove her back to the main cabin. Min-jae sat with his laptop open, reading something in Korean that made his jaw clench. He looked up when she appeared. "You should have called for the attendant if you needed something." "I can get my own food." "Not on this flight, you can't." He closed the laptop and stood. What do you want? They've got everything. I don't care, whatever's easy. Min-jae studied her for a long moment, then pressed a button on the wall. The attendant appeared within seconds. 2 of the salmon plates, he said. And coffee. Strong. The woman disappeared again. Min-jae gestured to the seat across from him. Evelyn sat, tucking her legs underneath her and pulling his jacket tighter around her shoulders. She hadn't given it back yet. Wasn't sure she wanted to. Can I ask you something? She said. You can ask. I might not answer. Why did you agree to this marriage? You said you could have anyone you wanted. So why honor some contract your family made decades ago? Min-jae was quiet for so long that Evelyn thought he might not respond at all. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. Because I'm tired, he said, finally. Tired of women who want me for my money or my power or the thrill of sleeping with someone dangerous. Tired of trying to figure out who's genuine and who's playing an angle. He paused. You're here because you had no choice. That means I know exactly where I stand with you. No games, no pretending. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Maybe, but it's honest. The attendant brought their food, perfectly plated salmon with vegetables Evelyn couldn't name, and a sauce that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget used to. She picked at it while Min-jae ate with mechanical efficiency, like fueling his body was just another task to complete. Tell me about the resort, Evelyn said, desperate to fill the silence. Private island, 30 villas total. Ours is the largest, completely isolated from the others. Staff available 24 hours, but they stay out of sight unless you need something. Sounds lonely. That's the point. 2 weeks where no one can touch us. Us. The words settled over Evelyn like a weight. There was an us now, a unit, a partnership she hadn't asked for but couldn't escape. What are we supposed to do for 2 weeks, she asked. Min-jae's eyes met hers over the rim of his coffee cup. Whatever you want. Read, swim, sleep. I'm not going to force you into anything. Including sex. He set the cup down carefully. Especially that. But you said you need an heir. Not today, I don't. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. I told you I wouldn't touch you unless you wanted me to. I meant it. What if I never want you to? Something dark flickered across his face. Then we'll figure something else out when the time comes. Like what? A donor? If necessary. Evelyn pushed her plate away, appetite gone. This is so fucked up. Yes. And you're okay with it? I stopped being okay with most of my life a long time ago, Evelyn. This is just one more compromise in a long list of them. She wanted to ask what the others were, wanted to understand what shaped a man into someone so controlled, so armored, so completely closed off from normal human connection. But that required intimacy she wasn't ready for. They finished the flight in relative silence. Min-jae returned to his work. Evelyn pretended to sleep. The hours stretched and compressed until finally the captain announced their descent into Malay. The heat hit like a physical wall when they stepped off the plane. Evelyn had never been anywhere tropical. The humidity wrapped around her like a wet blanket, making it hard to breathe. Min-jae seemed unaffected, moving through customs with the ease of someone who traveled constantly. A speedboat waited at the dock, sleek and expensive like everything else in Min-jae's world. The ride to the resort took 40 minutes across water so blue it didn't look real. Evelyn sat at the front and tried to process the fact that this was her honeymoon, that she was married to the man sitting behind her, his presence like gravity even when she wasn't looking at him. The resort appeared like a mirage. White sand beaches, palm trees, villas built on stilts over crystal clear water. Their villa was at the far end of the property, accessible only by a private walkway that stretched out over the ocean. Inside was pure luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows, an infinity pool that seemed to blend into the sea beyond, a bedroom with a bed so large it looked ridiculous. Everything was white and blue and designed to look effortless while probably costing a fortune. Master bedroom is through there, Min-jae said, pointing. There's a second bedroom if you'd prefer your own space. Where will you sleep? Wherever you're not, unless you want company. Evelyn's face heated. I'll take the master. Fine. I'll use the other one. Their luggage arrived, designer suitcases Evelyn had never seen before, packed by staff, with clothes she hadn't chosen. Min Jae had his people handle everything. She was just along for the ride. I need to make some calls, Min Jae said. Take your time settling in. If you need anything, just pick up any phone and dial 0. He disappeared into the second bedroom and closed the door, leaving Evelyn alone in paradise. She stood at the window and stared at the ocean and tried not to cry. The first 3 days passed in a strange kind of limbo. Evelyn avoided Min Jae. Min Jae led her. They orbited each other like planets on different trajectories, sharing space but never touching. She spent most of her time on the beach or in the villa's pool, trying to outrun thoughts that caught up with her anyway. Every time her phone buzzed with updates from her mother, treatments going well, doctors optimistic, thank you, thank you, thank you, Evelyn felt the weight of what she'd traded settling heavier on her chest. Min Jae worked. She'd see him on calls in Korean or English or languages she didn't recognize, his voice dropping to tones that promised violence to whoever was on the other end. Sometimes he'd disappear for hours. She never asked where he went. On the fourth morning, she woke to find him in the main room doing push-ups on the floor, shirtless, tattoos on full display. Evelyn froze in the bedroom doorway, unable to look away from the ink covering his back. A dragon that stretched from his shoulders to his waist, so detailed it seemed to move when his muscles flexed. He noticed her watching and stopped mid-rep. Sorry, didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. Her voice came out rough. I always get up early. Min Jae stood in one fluid motion, reaching for a towel draped over a chair. Sweat glistened on his chest, highlighting more tattoos, Korean characters over his ribs, something that looked like a phoenix on his left pectoral. Coffee? He asked. Sure. They moved through the morning routine like strangers forced to share an elevator, polite, careful, maintaining distance. Min Jae made coffee in the villa's high-end machine while Evelyn pretended to check her phone. There's a restaurant on the main beach, he said, handing her a cup. If you want to eat somewhere other than here. Are you asking me to have breakfast with you? I'm giving you options. Evelyn sipped her coffee. It was perfect, exactly how she liked it, even though she'd never told him her preferences. He'd probably had someone research her. The restaurant sounds nice, she said. Something that might have been relief crossed his face. Give me 20 minutes to shower. The restaurant was open air with tables set in the sand, waves lapping just feet away from where they sat. Other couples scattered around them, honeymooners and anniversary celebrants, people who actually loved each other. Evelyn ordered fruit and yogurt she didn't want. Min Jae got the full breakfast spread and worked through it like a machine. You have to eat more than that, he said, nodding at her barely touched plate. I'm not hungry. You haven't been hungry in 4 days. That's not sustainable. Stop monitoring what I eat. Stop starving yourself. Evelyn set her fork down hard enough to make noise. I'm not starving myself. I'm just not used to this. She gestured around them. Any of this. Then get used to it. This is your life now. For how long? Min Jae's expression went carefully blank. What do you mean? The marriage. When does it end? 5 years? 10? Are we doing this until one of us dies? That's generally how marriage works. Not marriages like ours. He was quiet for a long moment, coffee cup halfway to his lips. What do you want me to say, Evelyn? That we'll get divorced once your mother's treatment is done? That you can walk away whenever you want? Would you let me? No. The word landed between them like a stone thrown into still water. Why not? Evelyn demanded. You said I had power. You said I had choices. You do. But leaving isn't one of them. Min Jae set his cup down with controlled precision. I told you what I needed from this arrangement, a stable marriage, an heir eventually. I keep my word, Evelyn. I expect you to keep yours. So I'm trapped. You're protected. There's a difference. Is there? Min Jae leaned forward, voice dropping low enough that only she could hear. Yes. Because if you were trapped, I'd be forcing myself on you every night trying to get you pregnant. I'd be controlling every aspect of your life. I'd be treating you like property instead of a person. His eyes burned into hers. I've given you freedom within the bounds of our agreement. Don't confuse that with weakness. Evelyn's pulse hammered in her throat. This was the man people feared, the one who controlled empires and ended lives with a phone call. She'd almost forgotten while watching him make coffee and eat breakfast like a normal human being. I want to go back to the villa, she said. We haven't finished eating. I'm done. She stood up. Min-jae didn't try to stop her, just watched her with an expression she couldn't read as she walked away. She made it halfway back to their villa before the tears started. By the time she reached the bedroom, she was sobbing, ugly, gasping cries that came from somewhere deep in her chest. This was supposed to be temporary, a sacrifice with an end date, but Min-jae had just made it clear that she'd sold herself permanently, and there was no escape clause in the contract she'd signed. She didn't hear him come in, didn't know he was there until his hand settled carefully on her shoulder. "Don't touch me," Evelyn choked out. The hand withdrew immediately, but he didn't leave. "I know you hate this," Min-jae said quietly. "I know you hate me, and I'm sorry, but I can't let you go." "Why not?" "Because I made promises to my family. Because walking away from this marriage would make me look weak, and weakness gets people killed in my world. Because—" He stopped, jaw working. "Because what?" "Because you're the first person in 10 years who's looked at me like I'm something other than a weapon." Evelyn turned to stare at him. Min-jae stood in the doorway, backlit by tropical sun, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "I don't know what you want from me," she whispered. "I don't either." He ran a hand through his hair, destroying the perfect styling. "I thought this would be simple, business, but you keep—" He made a frustrated sound. "You keep being human, and it's making everything complicated." "So what now?" "Now we figure out how to exist in the same space without destroying each other." "I don't know if I can do that." "You don't have a choice." He said it without malice, just brutal honesty. "Neither of us do." He left before she could respond, pulling the door closed behind him. Evelyn lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling and tried to remember what it felt like to have control over her own life. The tension between them stretched tighter over the next 3 days. They moved around each other like boxers in a ring, careful not to make contact, waiting for someone to throw the first punch. On day 8, Evelyn decided she needed air. She dressed in one of the sundresses someone had packed for her and left the villa without telling Min-jae where she was going. Let him worry for once. The main beach area was busier during the day. Resort guests swimming, sunbathing, drinking cocktails that came in coconuts. Evelyn found a lounge chair far from everyone else and tried to lose herself in a book she couldn't focus on. "Evelyn Carter?" The voice made her stomach drop. She looked up to find Logan Pierce standing over her, blocking the sun. He looked exactly like he had in high school. All American good looks, expensive polo shirt, smile that hid cruelty underneath. "It's Kang now," Evelyn said flatly. "Right. I heard you got married." Logan's smile widened. "To some Korean businessman, wasn't it? Must be nice, landing a sugar daddy to bail out your bankrupt family." Heat flooded Evelyn's face. "Get away from me, Logan." "Why? We're just talking." He sat down on the lounge chair next to hers, uninvited. "I'm here with some friends. We saw you yesterday and I told them I knew you from school. They didn't believe me at first, thought maybe I was mistaken and you were just staff or something." "Leave me alone." "Come on, Evie, don't be like that. I'm just catching up with an old friend." His hand landed on her wrist. "Why don't you come have a drink with us? I want to hear all about this mysterious husband of yours." Evelyn tried to pull away. Logan's grip tightened. "Let go." "In a minute. First tell me how much he paid for you. I'm curious what the going rate is for—" "I suggest you remove your hand before I remove it for you." The voice cut through the beach noise like a blade. Logan's face went pale. His hand dropped from Evelyn's wrist like she'd burned him. Min-jae stood 3 feet away, wearing swim trunks and nothing else, tattoos on full display. He looked like violence barely contained in human form. "Who the fuck are you?" Logan tried to sound brave. Failed completely. "Her husband." Min-jae's eyes never left Logan's face. "And you just made a very serious mistake." The temperature dropped despite the tropical heat. Other beachgoers started backing away, sensing danger the way animals sense predators. Logan stood up, hands raised. "Hey man, we were just talking. You put your hands on her." "It was nothing. I barely—" "You insulted her, grabbed her, implied she was a whore." Min-jae took a step forward. Logan stumbled backward. "Do you know who I am?" "Look, if I offended you, someone tell him who I am." Min-jae's voice carried across the beach. "Anyone?" Silence. Then a man at a nearby table whispered something to his wife. Her face went white. Logan's friends appeared, 3 guys in expensive swimwear who'd probably never been in a real fight in their lives. Logan, we should go. Yeah, good idea. Logan edged toward them. Sorry about the confusion. We'll just... What's your full name? Minjae asked quietly. What? Your name. Say it. Logan's throat worked. Logan Pierce. Pierce Logistics? The shipping company? That's my father's... Not anymore. Minjae pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly. By tomorrow morning, Pierce Logistics will lose every major contract they have. Your family's assets will be frozen pending investigation into labor violations and customs fraud. Your father will be facing federal charges. And you... He looked up, smile cold enough to freeze blood. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering if it was worth it to touch my wife. The beach had gone completely silent. Logan's face turned from pale to green. You can't... I already did. Minjae pocketed his phone. Now get out of my sight before I decide that's not enough. Logan and his friends practically ran. Minjae turned to Evelyn, expression shifting instantly from deadly to concerned. Are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak. Did he do anything else? Say anything else? Just what you heard. Minjae's jaw clenched. That's enough. He pulled her to her feet, one hand settling possessively on her waist. Every person on that beach was staring at them now, phones out, probably recording. We're leaving, Minjae said. Can you walk? I'm fine. You're shaking. He was right. Her whole body trembled like she'd been dropped in ice water. Minjae guided her back toward their villa, his presence a wall between her and the rest of the world. When they were finally inside with the door locked behind them, he turned to face her. Tell me exactly what happened. Evelyn sank onto the couch. He recognized me from high school, started making comments about my family being bankrupt, called me a gold digger, then grabbed my wrist when I tried to leave. That's all? Isn't that enough? Minjae's hands curled into fists. More than enough. You're really going to destroy his family? Yes. Because he grabbed my wrist? Because he disrespected you. Because he thought he could put his hands on you without consequences. Minjae's voice was flat, emotionless, which somehow made it more terrifying. Because I told you no one touches what's mine. I'm not a possession. No, you're my wife, which makes it worse. He pulled out his phone again. I need to make sure the message is clear. Minjae, wait. He looked up. Don't, Evelyn said quietly. Don't destroy them. Why not? Because Logan is an asshole who peaked in high school and probably hates his life already. Because his family doesn't deserve to suffer for his mistakes. Because... She swallowed hard. Because I don't want you to be the kind of man who ruins lives over a grabbed wrist. Minjae stared at her for a long moment. You're asking me to show mercy to someone who insulted you. I'm asking you to be better than he is. Something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe, or disbelief that she'd ask him for this. If I stop, people will think I'm weak. I don't care what people think. I do. My reputation keeps you safe. Then keep me safe some other way. Evelyn stood up, closing the distance between them. Please. For me. Minjae's breath came shorter. He was so close she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, smell the salt water on his skin. You're the only person in the world who could ask me this. I know. He typed something into his phone, hit send, then tossed the device onto the couch like it had burned him. Done, he said. I stopped it. All of it? Most of it. Pierce Logistics will still face some audits. I can't completely undo what I set in motion, but the criminal charges are gone. Logan's father won't lose everything. Relief flooded through Evelyn. Thank you. Don't thank me. Minjae's voice came out rough. I should have kept going, should have made an example of him. But you didn't, because I asked you not to. Yes? They stood there in the quiet villa, close enough to touch, both breathing too fast. The air between them felt charged, like lightning about to strike. Why did you stop? Evelyn whispered. Minjae's hand came up slowly, carefully, giving her time to pull away. His fingers brushed her cheek, gentle despite the violence she knew they were capable of. Because you looked at me like I could be someone better than what I am, he said. And I've spent 10 years being a monster. Maybe it's time I tried being something else. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. She should step back, put distance between them. Remember that this was a business arrangement, nothing more. Instead, she leaned into his touch. Minji made a sound low in his throat, something between a groan and a curse. His other hand settled on her waist, thumb tracing small circles through the thin fabric of her dress. "Tell me to stop," he said. "I'm not going to do that." "Evelyn." She kissed him before he could finish the thought. For a second, Minjae froze. Then his control shattered. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her flesh against him as he kissed her back with an intensity that stole her breath. This wasn't like the careful kiss at their wedding. This was raw, desperate years of loneliness and hunger collapsing into a single moment. Evelyn's hands fisted in his hair. Minjae lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her toward the bedroom. They didn't make it that far. He pressed her against the wall instead, mouth moving from her lips to her jaw to her throat, while she gasped and pulled him closer. "We should stop," he murmured against her skin. "We should." Neither of them stopped. Minjae's hand slid under her dress, fingers spreading across bare skin. Evelyn arched into his touch, head falling back against the wall. "If we do this," Minjae said, voice rough with restraint, "everything changes." "I know. There's no going back to pretending this is just business." "I know that too." He pulled back just enough to look at her, dark eyes searching her face. "Are you sure?" Evelyn pulled him down into another kiss, slower this time, deliberate, answering the question without words. Minjae surrendered completely. They made it to the bedroom eventually, shedding clothes and boundaries in equal measure. Evelyn had expected him to be rough, demanding, taking what he wanted without concern for her pleasure. Instead, he touched her like she might break, gentle and reverent and completely focused on her reactions. "Tell me if I do something you don't like," he said, voice low. "I'll tell you if you do something I do like." His laugh was surprised and genuine. "Fair enough." Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets that cost more than Evelyn's used to make in a month, both breathing hard, skins slick with sweat despite the air conditioning. Minjae's fingers traced patterns on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" "Better than okay." "I didn't hurt you?" Evelyn turned to face him. "Do I look hurt?" He studied her with an intensity that made her feel naked in a different way. "You look beautiful." Heat flooded her face. "Stop. It's true. You're supposed to be a ruthless mafia boss, not a guy who gives compliments." "I can be both." His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her lower lip. "You make me want to be both." Something warm and terrifying bloomed in Evelyn's chest. She pressed closer, resting her head against his shoulder, feeling his heartbeat slow to match hers. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now we stop pretending we don't want each other." "And then?" "And then we figure out the rest as we go." It wasn't a promise of love or happily ever after, but it was honest, and somehow that was enough. Evelyn closed her eyes and let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd made the right choice after all. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, barriers destroyed, pretense abandoned. For the first time since the wedding, Evelyn didn't dream about escaping. She dreamed about staying. And when she woke the next morning to find Minjae watching her with an expression that looked dangerously close to tenderness, she reeled. Evelyn woke to find Minjae watching her with an expression that looked dangerously close to tenderness. She realized with sudden clarity that she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The carefully constructed walls between them had crumbled, and now she was lying naked in bed with a man who controlled criminal empires and destroyed lives with phone calls. A man she was starting to care about. The thought terrified her more than anything else that had happened in the past 2 weeks. Minji's fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "You're thinking too loud." "I'm allowed to think." "About what?" "About how complicated this just became." His hand stilled. "Regrets already?" Evelyn turned to face him fully, taking in the sharp angles of his face softened by morning light, the tattoos dark against golden skin, the vulnerability in his eyes that he probably didn't know was showing. "No, that's what scares me." "Why?" "Because I should regret it. I should want to take it back. but I don't. Something that might have been relief crossed Min Jae's expression. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead that felt more intimate than everything they'd done the night before. Good. Because I'm not letting you go now. The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed her. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in her stomach. They spent the morning in bed, talking in fragments between kisses that led to more. Min Jae told her about growing up in Seoul, about a father who'd beaten discipline into him, and a mother who'd disappeared when he was 12. Evelyn shared memories of a childhood that felt like someone else's life, birthday parties and school plays and family dinners before everything fell apart. When did you take over the organization? Evelyn asked, fingers tracing the dragon on his back. 18. My father got careless, made enemies he couldn't handle. They killed him in front of me. Min Jae's voice stayed flat, emotionless. I spent the next 2 years hunting down everyone involved. By the time I was done, no one questioned whether I was ready to lead. That's horrifying. That's my life. Was. Past tense. He turned to look at her. What? You keep talking about who you were, what you've done, like it defines everything you'll ever be. Evelyn met his eyes. But people change. You could change. Into what? I don't know. Someone who doesn't solve every problem with violence? Min Jae's laugh was bitter. Violence is the only language people in my world understand. Maybe you need a different world. Maybe. His hand cupped her face. Or maybe I just needed you in mine. The conversation was getting too heavy, too real. Evelyn kissed him to avoid responding, and Min Jae let her, apparently just as eager to escape into something simpler than words. By afternoon, hunger drove them from the bedroom. They ate lunch on the villa's deck, overlooking water so clear Evelyn could see fish swimming below. Min Jae wore only swim trunks, apparently unconcerned about his tattoos being on full display. Evelyn had borrowed one of his shirts, the fabric hanging to mid-thigh. We should go into the water, Min Jae said, watching her pick at a salad. I don't swim well. I'll teach you. You don't seem like the teaching type. I'm not, but I'm making an exception for you. He stood, holding out his hand. Come on. The water was warm and perfect, lapping against Evelyn's skin like silk. Min Jae kept one arm around her waist, supporting her weight as she floated. Relax, he said. I've got you. That's what I'm afraid of. Why? Because I'm starting to believe it. His grip tightened. You should believe it. I meant what I said. No one touches what's mine. I'm not a possession. No, you're worse. His eyes burned into hers. You're a weakness, and in my world, weaknesses get exploited. So what does that make me? A liability? It makes you the most dangerous thing that's ever happened to me. He pulled her closer, water sloshing between them. And I still can't make myself let you go. Evelyn should have been frightened by the intensity in his voice. Instead, she felt something warm and terrifying bloom in her chest. I'm not asking you to. The kiss surrounded by ocean and sunlight, the rest of the world forgotten. That night, Min Jae's phone rang during dinner. He ignored it the first 3 times, but by the 4th, his jaw was tight with barely controlled frustration. I need to take this, he said. Go ahead. He stepped onto the deck, voice dropping to Korean as soon as he answered. Evelyn couldn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Cold, commanding, threatening. When he came back inside, his expression was carefully neutral. Everything okay? Evelyn asked. Business. Nothing urgent. You're lying. Min Jae's eyes snapped to hers. Excuse me. Your jaw does this thing when you're lying. Little muscle twitch right here. She touched her own jaw to demonstrate. What's actually going on? For a moment, she thought he might tell her to mind her own business. Then his shoulders dropped slightly, some of the tension bleeding out. There's a situation in Seoul that needs my attention, he said. Nothing you need to worry about. Does it involve people dying? Potentially. Then I'm worrying about it. Why? Because you're my husband. Because what you do reflects on me whether I like it or not. Because... She stopped, not ready to finish that sentence. Min Jae crossed to her, tilting her chin up with one finger. Because what? Because I care about you, okay? I know I shouldn't. I know this was supposed to be business, but I can't help it. Something raw and vulnerable flashed across his face. Evelyn, don't. Don't make it into something bigger than it is. I'm just saying I don't want you to become a monster because that's what people expect. I already am a monster. No, you're a man who's done monstrous things. There's a difference. He kissed her hard, desperately, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When he pulled back, his breathing was ragged. I don't deserve you, he said. Probably not. But you've got me anyway. They spent their last few days in the Maldives in a bubble that felt fragile and precious. Minjae worked less, smiled more, touched her constantly like he couldn't quite believe she was real. Evelyn let herself fall deeper into the fantasy that maybe this could work, that maybe a marriage built on desperation could transform into something real. She should have known better. The flight back to New York was quiet. Minjae spent most of it on his laptop, catching up on 2 weeks of neglected business. Evelyn tried to read but couldn't focus, anxiety building in her chest the closer they got to reality. What happens when we land? She asked. Minjae looked up from his screen. We go home. You settle into the penthouse. Life continues. That's it? What else were you expecting? I don't know. Instructions? Rules? I told you, you're free to live your life however you want. Finish your degree if you're interested. Get a job. Pursue hobbies. Just... He paused. Be careful who you trust. Why? Because people will try to use you to get to me. They'll pretend to be friends. They'll seem genuine. But everyone wants something. Even you? Especially me. He closed his laptop. The difference is I'm honest about it. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Tribeca that probably cost more than some small countries. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city that looked like something out of a magazine. The furniture was modern and expensive and completely impersonal, like a showroom waiting for actual humans to move in. Make whatever changes you want, Minjae said, watching her take it all in. Redecorate, renovate, burn it down, and start over. It's your space now, too. Our space. Yes. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression hardened. I need to go out for a few hours. Business meeting I can't postpone. At 10 p.m.? My business doesn't keep normal hours. He kissed her forehead. There's food in the kitchen, wine in the cellar, everything you need. Security is downstairs if you need anything. When will you be back? Late, don't wait up. He left before she could ask more questions, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that made Evelyn's stomach clench. She wandered through the penthouse like a ghost haunting someone else's life. Her clothes had been unpacked and hung in a closet the size of her childhood bedroom. Her bathroom had a tub that could fit 3 people and a shower with enough settings to launch a rocket. None of it felt real. She tried calling her mother, got voicemail, tried her father. Same result. The silence pressed in from all sides. Evelyn poured herself wine she didn't want and stood at the window watching the city lights blur into abstract patterns. Somewhere down there, Minjae was conducting business that probably involved threats and violence, and things she didn't want to think about. She was married to that man. She'd slept with that man. She was falling for that man. The thought made her laugh, high and sharp and slightly hysterical. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Is this Evelyn Kang? Her fingers hesitated over the screen before typing back. Who is this? A friend. I have information about your husband you need to see. Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m., Central Park near Bethesda Fountain. Come alone. Every instinct screamed trap. Evelyn blocked the number and poured the wine down the sink. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Minjae came home at 4 in the morning, smelling like cigarettes and whiskey, and something metallic that might have been blood. He stripped in the bathroom without saying a word, and when he finally came to bed, he pulled Evelyn against him like she was the only thing anchoring him to humanity. Are you okay? She whispered. No. Do you want to talk about it? No. She didn't push, just held him while his breathing slowly steadied into something resembling sleep. The next morning, Minjae was gone before she woke up. No note, no text, just empty space where his body had been. Evelyn told herself she wasn't going to that meeting, told herself all through breakfast and her shower and getting dressed, told herself right up until she found herself in a taxi heading toward Central Park at 1:30. The fountain was surrounded by tourists taking photos and street performers playing for tips. Evelyn spotted a woman sitting alone on a bench, mid-40s, with sharp features and designer clothes that screamed old money. The woman stood when Evelyn approached. "Mrs. Kang, thank you for coming." "I haven't decided if I'm staying. Who are you?" "My name is Catherine Park. I was married to Min Jae's older brother." Evelyn's blood went cold. "Min Jae doesn't have a brother. Not anymore. He died 5 years ago." Catherine's smile was bitter. Or rather, he was killed. By Min Jae. The world tilted. Evelyn grabbed the back of the bench to steady herself. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Catherine pulled a folder from her expensive handbag. "This is everything I've compiled. Police reports, witness statements, financial records. All of it points to the same conclusion. Min Jae murdered his own brother to take control of the organization." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you seem like a decent person who got trapped in something you don't understand. Because Min Jae destroys everything he touches. Because his brother was a good man trying to get the family out of the criminal business, and Min Jae killed him for it." Evelyn's hands shook as she took the folder. "This could all be fabricated." "It's not. But don't take my word for it. Ask your husband about Kang Ji-hoon. Ask him what really happened 5 years ago. See if he can look you in the eye and lie." "Why now? Why come to me after all this time?" Catherine's expression turned cold. "Because I've spent 5 years gathering evidence and building a case, and I'm finally ready to destroy him. I wanted you to know what's coming so you have a chance to get out before everything falls apart." "You're trying to take him down." "I'm trying to get justice for my husband." "And you want me to help you?" "I want you to save yourself." Catherine stood. "Read the file. Make your own decision, but do it quickly. Things are going to move fast from here." She walked away, disappearing into the crowd before Evelyn could respond. Evelyn sat on that bench for 20 minutes, folder burning in her hands like evidence of a crime she'd witnessed. Finally, she opened it. The first page was a death certificate. Kang Ji-hoon, age 31, cause of death, gunshot wound to the head, ruled suicide. Except the police report underneath contradicted that. Witnesses reported hearing an argument. Forensics found inconsistencies with the suicide theory. The investigation was shut down within 48 hours by people with connections high enough to make it disappear. There were financial records showing Ji-hoon had been working with prosecutors, preparing to turn evidence against the family organization. Photos of him meeting with federal agents. Testimony from people who said Min Jae had been furious about his brother's betrayal. And then Ji-hoon was dead, and Min Jae took over everything. Evelyn's vision blurred. She flipped through page after page, each one painting a picture of the man she'd married as something far worse than she'd imagined. A fratricide. Someone who'd murdered his own blood to secure power. Her phone rang. "Min Jae." She stared at his name on the screen, unable to make herself answer. It rang 3 more times before she finally picked up. "Where are you?" Min Jae's voice was tight with something that sounded like worry. "Central Park." "Why?" "I needed air." "You should have told security. It's not safe for you to wander around alone." The irony of him talking about her safety made Evelyn want to laugh or scream or both. "I'm fine. I'll be home soon." "Evelyn?" She hung up before he could finish. The folder felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Evelyn shoved it into her bag and walked toward the park exit on legs that barely held her weight. She had to get home. She had to look Min Jae in the eye and ask him. She had to know if the man she was falling for was capable of murdering his own brother. The penthouse felt different when she walked in, colder, darker, like the walls had absorbed the truth Catherine had given her. Min Jae was in his office, door partially open, speaking rapid Korean into his phone. Evelyn dropped her bag on the couch and waited. 10 minutes later, he emerged, face carefully neutral. "You were gone a while." "I was thinking." "About?" "Us. This marriage. Everything." Something flickered in his eyes, caution, maybe, or fear. "And what did you conclude?" "That I don't actually know you at all." Min Jae went very still. "What happened?" "Tell me about your brother." The color drained from his face. For 3 seconds, he looked like she'd punched him in the chest. Then the mask slammed down, expression going carefully blank. "I don't have a brother." "You did. Ji-hoon." He died 5 years ago. Who told you about him? Does it matter? Yes. Minjae's voice dropped to something dangerous. Who told you? His widow, Catherine. Minjae's hands curled into fists. She contacted you? She said you killed him, that you murdered your own brother to take over the organization. Evelyn pulled the folder from her bag, threw it at his feet. She gave me proof. Minjae stared at the scattered papers like they were a bomb about to explode. And you believed her? I don't know what to believe. That's why I'm asking you. Evelyn's voice cracked. Did you kill your brother? It's not that simple. It's a yes or no question, Minjae. Nothing in my world is yes or no. Try. He was quiet for so long that Evelyn thought he might not answer at all. Then he bent down, gathering the papers with movements that suggested barely controlled violence. Jihoon was going to destroy everything our family built, Minjae said, finally. He was working with federal prosecutors, planning to turn evidence that would have sent dozens of people to prison. People with families, people who'd been loyal for generations. So you killed him to protect criminals? I killed him to protect the organization. Minjae's eyes met hers, flat and dead. He gave me no choice. It was him or hundreds of others. The admission hit Evelyn like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, hand pressed to her mouth. Oh my God. He was my brother and I loved him, but he was going to get people killed. Good people. Innocent families. You're a murderer. Yes. The single word hung between them, simple and damning. Evelyn's whole body shook. You killed your own brother and then you married me. You touched me. You made love to me. And the whole time you were… She couldn't finish the sentence. I'm exactly what I told you I was from the beginning, Minjae said quietly. A man who's done terrible things. I never lied to you about that. But you didn't tell me you killed your own blood. Would it have changed anything? Would you have said no if I'd confessed to fratricide before the wedding? Yes, you do. Your mother was dying. Your family was drowning. You would have married me anyway because you had no choice. His voice was brutal, honest, cutting through every excuse Evelyn had built. So don't stand there and act like this changes the fundamental transaction we made. It changes everything. Tears streamed down Evelyn's face. I was starting to think you were more than what you pretended to be, that maybe underneath the violence and the control you were actually human. I never pretended to be human. You decided that on your own. Because you let me. Because you touched me like you cared. Because you looked at me like I mattered. You do matter. Minjae took a step toward her. Evelyn backed away. Evelyn, don't. Don't come near me. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. You're a monster. Catherine was right. You destroy everything you touch. Something cracked in Minjae's expression, pain maybe, or recognition that he'd lost something he couldn't get back. Where does that leave us? I don't know. You can't leave? Watch me. I told you from the beginning, leaving isn't an option. So what? You'll kill me too? Add me to the list of people who got in your way? Minjae flinched like she'd slapped him. I would never hurt you. You already did. Evelyn grabbed her bag, hands shaking so hard she could barely hold it. I need to get out of here. I need to think. Evelyn, please, let me go, Minjae. If you ever cared about me at all, let me go. She didn't wait for his response, just ran for the elevator, praying he wouldn't follow. He didn't. Evelyn made it to the street before the sobs overtook her. She collapsed against the building, gasping for air that wouldn't come, while pedestrians gave her a wide berth and pretended not to notice. Her phone buzzed. Text from Catherine. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. If you need somewhere safe to stay, I have a guest room. The address is below. Evelyn stared at the message through tears, at the offer of sanctuary from the widow of a man her husband had killed. She should go back upstairs, should try to work through this, should remember that she'd known from the beginning what Minjae was. But knowing someone was dangerous and knowing they'd murdered their own brother were two very different things. Her hands typed a response before her brain could stop them. Send me the address. Catherine's apartment was in the Upper East Side, old money and quiet elegance. She opened the door in silk pajamas and no makeup, looking older and more fragile than she had in the park. Come in, she said gently. You're safe here. The guest room was tasteful and impersonal, like a hotel suite waiting for temporary occupants. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed while Catherine brought tea she didn't drink. I know this is hard, Catherine said, loving someone and realizing they're a monster. I don't love him. Don't you? Evelyn's hands trembled around the teacup. I don't know what I feel. 3 weeks ago, I'd never met him. Now I'm married to him, and he's... Her voice broke. He killed his own brother. Ji-hoon was a good man. He tried to do the right thing. Catherine's eyes shone with unshed tears. Min-jae executed him for it. He said it was to protect the organization. That's what men like him always say. They justify their violence by claiming it's necessary, that they have no choice. But we always have choices, Evelyn. Min-jae chose power over family, over humanity. What are you going to do with the evidence? I'm turning it over to prosecutors next week. They've been building a RICO case against the Kang organization for months. This will give them everything they need. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Min-jae will go to prison. If there's any justice in the world, yes. And me? What happens to me? Catherine reached across the space between them, squeezing Evelyn's hand. You get free. You get your life back. You get to be something other than the wife of a criminal. It should have sounded like salvation. Instead, it felt like the world ending. Evelyn stayed in Catherine's guest room that night, staring at the ceiling while her phone buzzed with increasingly desperate messages from Min-jae. Please come home. We need to talk. I'm sorry for everything. Don't do this. Evelyn, please. She didn't respond to any of them. Around 3 a.m., her mother called. Evelyn almost didn't answer, but guilt won out. Sweetheart, are you okay? Min-jae called looking for you. He sounded worried. I'm fine, Mom. I just needed space. Did something happen? Everything. Nothing. The end of a marriage that never should have started. We had a fight, Evelyn said. I'm staying with a friend for a few days. Do you want to talk about it? Not really. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Marriage is hard, honey, especially in the beginning, but whatever you're fighting about, it can be fixed. Not this. Is he hurting you? Not physically. Then what is it? Evelyn closed her eyes. He's not who I thought he was. Is anyone ever who we think they are at first? Real people are complicated and messy, and they disappoint us, but that doesn't mean we give up on them. What if the disappointment is too big to forgive? Then you make a choice. Either you walk away, or you decide that the good parts are worth fighting for despite the bad. What if there aren't enough good parts? Her mother sighed. Only you can answer that, sweetheart. But whatever you decide, your father and I support you, even if it means walking away from everything Min-jae's given us. You'd go back to being broke and dying? I'd rather be broke and dying than watch my daughter stay in a marriage that destroys her. Evelyn's throat closed up. I love you, Mom. I love you too, so much. They said goodbye. Evelyn curled into a ball on the expensive sheets and cried until she had nothing left. Morning came too fast. Catherine made breakfast that Evelyn couldn't eat and coffee that tasted like ash. Have you thought about what you're going to do? Catherine asked gently. Not really. You can stay here as long as you need. No pressure. Thank you. Catherine hesitated, then pulled out another folder, thinner than the first one. There's something else you should know. Evelyn's stomach clenched. What? Your family's debt, the medical bills, all of it. Catherine slid the folder across. Min-jae didn't pay them off. He bought them. What does that mean? It means he owns your family's debt now. Every dollar they owe to him. If you leave, if you try to divorce him, he can call it all in immediately. The room spun. Evelyn gripped the edge of the table. He trapped me. He's been trapping you from the beginning. The marriage contract you signed? I had a lawyer look at it. The terms are ironclad. If you leave before producing an heir, your family loses everything. House, medical coverage, all of it. But he said I was free. He said I could... He lied. Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. Men like Min-jae always lie. They tell you what you want to hear while building cages you don't see until it's too late. Evelyn's hands shook. So my choices are stay married to a murderer or watch my mother die. Unless you're willing to help me take him down. How would that help? If Minji goes to prison, his assets get frozen or seized. The debt he holds over your family becomes unenforceable. You'd be free. Your mother would be free. Everyone would be free. Except Minji. He murdered my husband, Evelyn. He deserves to rot in prison. Maybe he did. Probably he did. So why did the thought of helping destroy him feel like tearing out her own heart? Evelyn stood on shaking legs. I need to think. There's not much time. The prosecutors need my evidence by Friday. That's 3 days away. I know. I'm sorry. But this is the window we have. Catherine stood too, reaching for Evelyn's hand. You're a good person caught in an impossible situation. Whatever you decide, I won't judge you for it. Evelyn nodded numbly and retreated to the guest room. Her phone had 63 messages from Minji now. She scrolled through them, desperate, angry, pleading, threatening, vulnerable. A whole spectrum of emotion from a man who'd claimed he didn't feel anything. The last one made her breath catch. I know I've lost you. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But please, just talk to me one more time. Let me explain everything. Then if you still want to leave, I won't stop you. I swear on my brother's grave. Swearing on the grave of the brother he'd killed should have been offensive. Instead, it felt like the most honest thing he'd ever said. Evelyn typed back before she could stop herself. Where? His response came in seconds. Anywhere you want. Name the place. She thought about neutral ground, public spaces, safety. Then she typed the address of the penthouse. 1 hour. Come alone. She told Catherine she was going for a walk. Didn't mention where. The woman's concern was palpable, but she didn't push, just reminded Evelyn that she had a safe place to return to. The elevator ride up to the penthouse felt like ascending to her own execution. Evelyn's hands shook as she keyed in the code, pushed open the door. Minji stood at the window overlooking the city, exactly where she'd stood 2 nights ago, feeling lost and alone. He turned when she entered, and Evelyn's breath caught at the devastation in his face. He looked like he hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't done anything but wait for her to come back. You came, he said hoarsely. I said I would. I thought... His voice broke. I thought I'd lost you completely. You did. Evelyn stayed near the door, maintaining distance. I came to tell you that I know about the debt, about how you own everything my family owes, about the contract terms that trap me here. Minji's jaw clenched. Catherine told you. She's telling prosecutors everything. The evidence about Ji-hoon, your whole organization. It's over, Minji. I know. The admission shocked her. You know? I've known she was building a case for months. I've been trying to contain it, but she's thorough and patient, and she wants me destroyed. He laughed bitterly. Can't really blame her. Then why didn't you stop her? Because maybe I deserve it. Minji moved closer. Evelyn backed toward the door. He stopped, hands raised. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to explain. Explain what? How you murdered your brother? How you trapped me in a marriage I can't escape? How everything you said about giving me freedom was a lie? Not everything was a lie. His voice dropped. The way I feel about you, that's real. How am I supposed to believe anything you say? You're not. I know that. Minji ran a hand through his hair, destroying any attempt at composure. But I'm going to tell you anyway, because you deserve the truth. All of it. I'm listening. He took a shaking breath. Ji-hoon was my older brother. He was supposed to take over the organization after our father died. But he didn't want it. He wanted out. Wanted to go legitimate, turn evidence, start over clean. His hands clenched into fists. I tried to talk him out of it. Tried to make him see that betraying the organization meant destroying hundreds of lives. But he wouldn't listen. So you killed him. I arranged for him to have an accident. Made it look like suicide. Took over before anyone could question the transition. Minji's eyes were dead, flat. And I've lived with that choice every day since. Do you regret it? Every second of every day, but I'd probably do it again because the alternative was worse. How is murder ever the better alternative? When the person you kill is about to get dozens of innocent people imprisoned or killed. When their moral crusade would destroy families and communities. When... He stopped, jaw working. You wouldn't understand. You're right. I don't understand how you could kill your own brother and then sleep at night. I don't sleep, haven't slept properly in 5 years, not until... He looked at her with something raw and broken in his eyes. Not until you. Evelyn's breath caught. Don't do that. Don't make me into some kind of salvation story for you. Too late. You already are. Min-jae took another step forward. This time Evelyn didn't back away. You asked me once why I agreed to this marriage. I lied. It wasn't because I needed a wife who understood what the arrangement was. It was because I needed someone who didn't know what I'd done. Someone who might look at me and see something other than a monster. I did see something else. And then I found out the truth. And now you see me for what I really am. A murderer who trapped me in a marriage I can't escape. Yes, his voice cracked. Both of those things. And also a man who fell in love with his wife and doesn't know how to let her go. The words hit Evelyn like a physical blow. You don't love me. You don't know how. Neither did I. Until you. Min-jae closed the distance between them in 2 strides. Evelyn pressed back against the door but couldn't escape. You made me want to be better. Made me think maybe I could be something other than what I've always been. And now I'm losing you because of who I was before I knew that was even possible. Min-jae, help me, he whispered. Tell me how to fix this. Tell me what I need to do to make you stay. There's nothing you can do. You killed your brother. You lied to me. You trapped me. There's no coming back from that. Then kill me. Evelyn froze. What? Min-jae pulled a gun from the back of his waistband, pressed it into her hands. If I'm the problem, remove me. I won't fight back. I won't stop you. Are you insane? Probably. His hands wrapped around hers, fingers settling over the trigger. But I mean it. If you want out and I'm the only thing standing in your way, then end it. Free yourself. The gun was heavy and cold and terrifying in her hands. Evelyn tried to pull away, but Min-jae held firm, keeping her finger on the trigger. I can't. Yes, you can. It's easy. Just squeeze. Min-jae, stop. No one would blame you. Abused wife kills criminal husband. You'd probably get a medal. I don't want to kill you. Then what do you want? The question hung between them, impossible to answer, because what Evelyn wanted was contradictory and insane. She wanted him gone, and she wanted him to hold her. She wanted to destroy him, and she wanted to save him. She wanted to run, and she wanted to stay. I don't know, she whispered. Min-jae's grip loosened. He took the gun back gently, set it on the table beside them. Then stay until you figure it out. That's all I'm asking. Just don't leave until you know for sure what you want. And if what I want is you in prison, then I'll turn myself in. If that's what it takes for you to be free and safe and happy, I'll do it. You're lying. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He cupped her face with both hands, tilting her chin up until she had no choice but to meet his eyes. I love you, Evelyn. I know you don't believe me. I know I don't deserve for you to believe me. But it's true anyway. Evelyn's vision blurred with tears. This is so fucked up. I know. I should hate you. You should. But I don't. The admission tore out of her like a confession. I don't hate you, and that makes me hate myself. Don't. His thumb brushed away tears. Don't hate yourself for being human, for having feelings that don't make sense, for being complicated. What am I supposed to do, Min-jae? Catherine has evidence that will destroy you. My family's debt is tied to you. I can't stay, and I can't leave. There's a third option. What? His hands dropped from her face. He stepped back, expression shifting to something cold and calculating that she recognized from their first meeting. I can make Catherine's evidence disappear, he said. I can release your family's debt. I can free you from every trap I've built. He paused. And then you can choose whether to stay or go based on what you actually want, not what you're forced into. Evelyn stared at him. You'd do that? If it meant you stayed because you wanted to, not because you had to? Yes. Even if I choose to leave? Even then. His smile was sad and broken. I told you once that you had more power than you realized. This is me proving it. What about Catherine? If her evidence disappears, she'll know I'm responsible. She might come after me some other way. But without the documentation, prosecutors won't touch me. I'll survive. And your brother? Justice for him? Min-jae's expression shuddered. There is no justice for what I did. Just consequences I'll live with forever. Evelyn's mind raced. If Min Jae did what he promised, released her family, destroyed the evidence, freed her from every obligation, then she'd have real choice for the first time since this started. She could leave. She could divorce him, go back to school, rebuild a normal life. She could forget the past month ever happened. But looking at him now, at the broken, desperate man offering to destroy his own safety net just to give her freedom, Evelyn realized with stunning clarity that she didn't want to forget. She wanted him. Broken, violent, complicated him. If you do this, she said slowly, if you give me real freedom to choose, then I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more lies. No more secrets. No more trapping me in agreements I don't understand. If I stay, it has to be as equals. You want me to treat a marriage to a mafia boss as an equal partnership? Yes. Min Jae laughed, short and surprised and genuine. That's insane. So is everything about this situation. Fair point. He moved closer again, slower this time, giving her space to refuse. If I do this, if I give you everything you're asking for, will you stay? Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The moment where she decided who she was going to be. The smart choice was to say no. To let him free her and then run as far away as possible from this life. But Evelyn had been making smart choices her whole life, and it had led her to selling herself to save her family. Maybe it was time to make a stupid choice. Maybe it was time to choose the dangerous thing. Ask me again in a week, she said. After you've done everything you promised, then I'll give you my answer. Min Jae's eyes searched her face. Whatever he saw there made something like hope flicker across his expression. 1 week, he agreed, and then you decide. He kissed her forehead gently, like she was something precious he was terrified of breaking. Evelyn closed her eyes and prayed she wasn't making the worst mistake of her life. But deep down, she already knew the answer she was going to give him. She just needed 7 days to figure out if she could live with. She just needed 7 days to figure out if she could live with the choice she was about to make. Min Jae moved that same night. Evelyn watched from the penthouse window as black cars arrived and departed in careful intervals. Men in dark suits carrying boxes and hard drives and everything Catherine had spent 5 years collecting. He made calls in 3 different languages, his voice never rising above conversational level, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. By midnight, Catherine Park's evidence had ceased to exist. It's done, Min Jae said, joining Evelyn at the window. He looked exhausted, shadows carved deep under his eyes. Every document, every recording, every photograph, gone. She'll know it was you. Let her. Without proof, she's just a widow with a grudge. He pulled out his phone, showed Evelyn a legal document. And this is the release for your family's debt, signed, notarized, filed with the courts. They owe me nothing. Evelyn's hands shook as she took the phone. The paperwork looked legitimate. Every dollar her family owed, marked as paid in full with no obligation to repay. Why? She whispered. Because I meant what I said. You deserve to choose freely. And if I choose to leave? Min Jae's jaw clenched. Then you leave. Just like that? Just like that. He took the phone back, pocketed it, though I'm hoping you won't. The vulnerability in his voice made Evelyn's chest ache. This man who commanded criminal empires and ended lives with phone calls was standing in front of her asking, not demanding, not threatening, asking her to stay. I need time, she said. Well, you have a week. I won't pressure you. He kept his word. For the next 6 days, Min Jae maintained careful distance. He slept in the guest room, ate breakfast before she woke up, left for work early and came home late. The few times they crossed paths, he was unfailingly polite and completely guarded, like they were strangers sharing an elevator instead of a married couple. Evelyn spent those days thinking. She called her mother, who was responding well to treatment and talking about the future with an optimism that had been absent for months. She walked through Central Park and tried to imagine what her life would look like if she left. Going back to Columbia, maybe, finishing her degree. Getting a normal job. Dating normal men who didn't have bodies buried in their past. The future looked safe and boring and utterly empty. On day 4, Catherine called. You're still there, she said without preamble. At the penthouse. With him. How do you know where I am? I've been keeping tabs, making sure you're safe. Catherine's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. All my evidence is gone, Evelyn. 5 years of work, vanished overnight. I know. Did you tell him? Did you warn him? He already knew. He's known for months that you were building a case. And he destroyed it to keep you. Catherine laughed bitterly. He murdered my husband and he gets to keep his wife. How is that fair? It's not. So leave him. Help me build a new case. We can start over. Evelyn closed her eyes. I can't. Why not? Because I don't want to. The silence on the other end was deafening. You're in love with him, Catherine said finally, with the man who killed his own brother. I don't know what I am, but I know I'm not interested in destroying him anymore. Then you're a fool. The line went dead. Evelyn stared at her phone and wondered if Catherine was right. Day 5 brought a delivery, a small box with no return address. Inside was a USB drive and a note in handwriting Evelyn didn't recognize. You should see this before you decide. A friend. She plugged the drive into her laptop with shaking hands. It contained a single video file dated 3 weeks before her wedding. The footage was grainy security camera quality, showing Min Jae in what looked like a warehouse. He stood in front of a man tied to a chair, face already bruised and bleeding. Evelyn's stomach turned. She should stop watching, should delete the file and pretend she'd never seen it. Instead, she pressed play. Min Jae's voice came through tinny and distorted. I'm going to ask you one more time. Who sent you? The man in the chair spat blood. Fuck you. Min Jae moved faster than the camera could track. His fists connected with the man's jaw, snapping his head back violently. Wrong answer. What followed was 5 minutes of systematic professional violence. Min Jae didn't rage or lose control. He worked methodically, asking questions and delivering punishment when he didn't get answers. By the end, the man was sobbing and begging and giving up names. Min Jae nodded to someone off camera. Get him to the hospital. Make sure he survives. The video ended. Evelyn sat in the empty penthouse and tried to reconcile the man in that footage with the one who'd held her gently in the Maldives. They were the same person. Both versions were real. The question was whether she could love one without accepting the other. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. There are dozens more videos like that one. Your husband is a monster. Save yourself while you still can. Evelyn blocked the number and deleted the video file. Then she sat down and made a list. On one side, murderer, liar, violent criminal, trapped me, destroyed evidence, capable of torture. On the other side, freed my family, kept his promises, protected me, showed vulnerability, offered me choice, loves me. Neither list was longer than the other. Both were completely true. Evelyn stared at the contradictions until the words blurred together and realized with absolute clarity that no amount of rational analysis would help her decide. This choice was never going to make sense. She could only make it and live with the consequences. Day 7 arrived like a deadline for execution. Evelyn woke early, showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater that felt like armor. Min Jae was already awake, sitting at the kitchen counter with coffee he wasn't drinking. Today's the day, he said without looking at her. I know. Have you decided? Yes. He set the mug down carefully, knuckles white from gripping it too hard. And? Evelyn crossed to him, close enough to see the fear he was trying to hide. I'm staying. The breath left his body like he'd been holding it for days. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Why? Because leaving would be the smart choice. And I'm tired of being smart. Because you're the worst possible person for me, and somehow that doesn't change how I feel. Because... She stopped, swallowing hard. Because I love you. And I hate that I love you. But I do. Min Jae's hand came up to cup her face, trembling against her skin. You have no idea what you're signing up for. Then show me. No more secrets. No more half-truths. If I'm staying for all of it. Evelyn, I mean it. I want to know everything, what you do, how your organization works, all of it. That's dangerous. So is loving you. I'm doing it anyway. Something broke in Min Jae's expression, relief and terror and desperate hope all at once. He pulled her into a kiss that tasted like coffee and promises neither of them could guarantee they'd keep. When they broke apart, Evelyn was breathless and shaking. I need you to understand something, Min-jae said quietly. The world I live in doesn't forgive weakness. If people think you're a liability, they'll come after you. If they think you're my weakness, they'll use you against me. Then teach me not to be a liability. That's not how this works. Then make it how it works. Evelyn pulled back to look at him fully. You said I had power. Prove it. Make me your partner, not your possession. Min-jae studied her for a long moment. You have no idea what you're asking. So explain it to me. He took her hand, led her to his office. The room was all dark wood and expensive furniture, dominated by a desk that probably cost more than a car. Min-jae pulled out a file, spread photographs across the polished surface. This is the Kozlov family, Russian mafia operating out of Brighton Beach. They've been pushing into territory we control for the past 6 months. He pointed to a man with a scarred face. Viktor Kozlov, second-generation Bratva, stupid enough to think he can take what's mine. What does he want? Our shipping routes, our distribution networks, control of the ports. Min-jae's jaw tightened. He's been making moves, testing boundaries. Last week, 3 of our warehouses were hit, products stolen, 2 men killed. Evelyn's stomach clenched. What are you going to do? End it. Permanently. Meaning kill him. Meaning send a message that can't be misunderstood. When? Tomorrow night. There's a meeting scheduled. Neutral ground. We're supposed to negotiate territory. His eyes met hers. We won't be negotiating. You're going to ambush him. I'm going to make sure he never threatens my people again. Evelyn's hands shook. And you want me to know this? Why? Because you said no more secrets. This is what my life looks like. What our life looks like now. Min-jae gathered the photographs, slid them back into the file. I have enemies who want me dead. Competitors who want what I have. Law enforcement who wants me in prison. Every day is a calculation of risks and rewards and how much violence is necessary to maintain control. That's terrifying. Yes. And you want me to accept it. I want you to understand it, to know what you're choosing when you say you're staying. Evelyn thought about the video she'd deleted, the evidence Catherine had gathered, the widow who'd warned her to run. What if I ask you not to kill him? She said quietly. Min-jae went very still. What? Viktor Kozlov, what if I ask you to find another way? There is no other way. He's killed my men, stolen my property. If I show mercy now, every other organization will see weakness. Or they'll see strength. It takes more courage to choose restraint than violence. This isn't the Maldives, Evelyn. I can't just stop because you asked nicely. Why not? You stopped with Logan Pierce. Logan was a spoiled civilian who grabbed your wrist. Victor is a professional criminal who's declared war on my organization. They're not comparable. They are if the principle is the same. You said I have power. I'm using it to ask you not to become a murderer again. Min-jae's hands curled into fists. I'm already a murderer, multiple times over. Then don't add another body to the count. And if Victor takes my restraint as weakness and escalates, if more of my people die because I chose mercy over strategy, then we deal with that when it happens. But at least you won't have more blood on your hands. Min-jae turned away from her, staring out the window at the city he secretly controlled. His shoulders were rigid with tension, every muscle tight. You're asking me to risk everything I've built on the hope that showing weakness won't get people killed, he said. I'm asking you to trust me. I do trust you. That's what makes this impossible. He turned back, eyes burning. You don't understand the stakes, Evelyn. This isn't a negotiation. It's survival. Mine. Yours. Everyone who depends on me for protection. Then explain it to me. Help me understand. Min-jae crossed to a wall safe, entered a code, pulled out a ledger. This is everyone on my payroll. 347 people whose livelihoods depend on the organization running smoothly. They have families. Kids in school. Mortgages. Medical bills. He flipped through pages. If Victor takes our territory, half these people lose everything. Some will end up working for him under worse conditions. Others will just disappear because they know too much. So protect them some other way. How? Diplomacy? Victor doesn't speak that language. He speaks violence and power and fear. Then speak louder than him without killing him. Min-jae slammed the ledger shut. You're being naive. Maybe, but I'm also right. You don't know that. Neither do you. But I know that every time you choose violence, it gets easier, and eventually you become the thing you do most often. Evelyn moved closer, placing her hand over his. I don't want you to be that person anymore. What if that's all I am? It's not. I've seen who you are when you let yourself be human. That person is worth saving. Minjae's breath came ragged. If I do this, if I find another way that doesn't involve killing Victor, and it fails, people will die. That blood will be on both of us. I know. And you're still asking me to try? Yes. He stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call in Korean that lasted 3 minutes. When he hung up, his expression was carefully neutral. I've authorized a different approach, he said. We'll offer Victor a compromise. Split the disputed territory. Establish clear boundaries. If he refuses or violates the agreement, then we escalate. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This could go very wrong. But it might go right. You're an optimist, and you're a pessimist. Maybe we balance each other out. Minjae pulled her into his arms, resting his chin on top of her head. I hope you're right, because if you're wrong, we'll both pay for it. Evelyn held him and tried not to think about all the ways this could backfire. The next 36 hours were tense. Minjae prepared for the meeting with Victor like a general planning a battle. Multiple contingencies, backup plans, security protocols. Evelyn watched him work and saw the weight of responsibility that came with controlling an organization this size. You could walk away from all of this, she said one evening while he reviewed security footage. And do what? I don't know, something legal, start over. Minjae's laugh was bitter. Men like me don't get fresh starts. We get prison or early graves. Or we get wives who convince us there's a third option. And what option is that? Gradual change, shifting the organization toward legitimate business, reducing the violence, building something sustainable instead of constantly fighting for territory. That would take years. So, we have time. Minjae looked at her like she'd suggested they colonize Mars. You're serious? Completely. You've already been moving money into legal investments, right? Real estate, tech startups, hedge funds? How did you know that? I've been paying attention. You're smart enough to see that the criminal empire model is unsustainable long term. Law enforcement gets better. Technology makes secrets harder to keep. Eventually, organizations like yours collapse or get absorbed. So your plan is what? Slow transformation into a legitimate businessman? Why not? Other families have done it. The Kennedys started with bootlegging. The Rockefellers were robber barons. Give it a generation and everyone forgets where the money came from. Minjae studied her with something like admiration. You've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about our future, what it could look like if we're smart about it. And you think I'm capable of that kind of change? I think you're capable of anything you decide to do. The question is whether you want to. He was quiet for a long time, fingers drumming against the desk. If I tried this, if I started legitimizing operations, some people wouldn't follow. They'd see it as betrayal. We'd have internal conflicts, possible fracturing of the organization. Then you manage it carefully. Reward loyalty. Provide exit strategies for people who don't want to transition. Make it clear that violence against the organization has consequences. You're talking about years of careful maneuvering? I'm talking about building something that lasts instead of constantly fighting to survive. Minjae pulled her onto his lap, arms wrapping around her waist. When did you become a criminal mastermind? I married one. Figured I should learn the trade. His laugh was genuine and surprised. You're terrifying, you know that? Good. You should be a little scared of me. I am. You make me want to be better, and that's the most dangerous thing anyone's ever done to me. They kissed until the security footage was forgotten, and the meeting with Victor felt distant instead of imminent. The night of the meeting, Evelyn insisted on coming. Absolutely not, Minjae said flatly. You said I was your partner. Partners don't stay home while the other one walks into danger. Partners also don't put themselves in unnecessary risk. There's risk everywhere. I'd rather face it with you than sit here wondering if you're coming back. Evelyn, I'm coming. You can waste time arguing or you can accept it and move on. Minjae's jaw clenched. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. I learned from the best. He made her wear a bulletproof vest under her jacket. assigned 2 personal bodyguards who looked like they could bench press cars, gave her a panic button connected directly to his security team. "If anything goes wrong, you run," he said while they drove to the meeting location. "Don't argue, don't try to help, just run. What if something happens to you? Then you run faster." The meeting was set at a restaurant in Brighton Beach that Victor's family owned. Neutral ground in theory, though Evelyn suspected neutrality was a fiction both sides were pretending to believe. They arrived with an entourage, 6 men in dark suits who radiated professional violence. Victor was already there with his own security, all of them built like walls and carrying enough firepower to start a small war. The restaurant had been cleared of civilians. Just 2 tables in the center of the room, one for Victor and his lieutenants, one for Min-jae and his team. Evelyn sat beside her husband, hyper-aware of every sound and movement. Victor was older than she'd expected, late 50s with gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He studied Evelyn with cold blue eyes that made her skin crawl. "You bring your wife to business meetings now?" Victor said in heavily accented English. "How American." "My wife goes where I go," Min-jae replied evenly. "Dangerous. What if something happens?" "Then something happens to you. Fair trade." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Let's discuss territory." What followed was 40 minutes of careful negotiation. Victor wanted access to shipping routes through the port. Min-jae offered limited access with strict controls. Victor countered with demands for more autonomy. Min-jae held firm on oversight. Evelyn watched the dance of power and compromise, seeing how Min-jae gave ground on small issues while holding absolute boundaries on critical ones. "You've changed," Victor said eventually. "The Min-jae I knew 2 years ago would have met my warehouse's raids with immediate retaliation. Bodies would have been found, messages sent." He leaned back in his chair. "But you're negotiating. Why?" Min-jae's hand found Evelyn's under the table, squeezing once. "Because I'm building something sustainable, and sustainable businesses don't run on corpses." "Weak," Victor spat. "You've gone soft." "I've gotten smart. There's a difference." "Is there?" Victor's eyes slid to Evelyn. "Or did your pretty American wife convince you that criminals can become respectable?" The temperature in the room dropped. Min-jae's bodyguard shifted, hands moving closer to weapons. Victor's men did the same. Evelyn felt her heart hammering but kept her expression neutral. "Careful," Min-jae said quietly. "You're close to making this personal." "Maybe I want it to be personal. Maybe I'm tired of playing nice with a man who's forgotten what power actually means." "I haven't forgotten anything. I'm choosing strategy over ego." "You're choosing weakness." Victor stood up. "The deal is off. I'll take what I want the old-fashioned way." "Sit down, Victor." "Or what? You'll negotiate me to death?" Min-jae's expression went completely cold, the mask of civilization dropping away to reveal something ancient and violent underneath. "Or I'll remind you why people feared my family long before you were born." The standoff stretched for 5 seconds that felt like hours. Then Victor laughed, loud and genuine. "There he is, the real Kong Min-jae." He sat back down. "I was starting to worry you'd lost your spine completely." "Never. I just prefer using my brain first." "Smart man." Victor pulled out a document. "Here's what I want. Real terms. No more dancing around." They negotiated for another hour. By the end, they had a framework. Victor got limited port access in exchange for staying out of Min-jae's primary territories. Violations would be handled through arbitration first, violence as last resort. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional. Victor signed first, then Min-jae. They shook hands like civilized men instead of criminals who'd been minutes from war. "Your wife has balls," Victor said to Evelyn directly. "Coming here, sitting through this without flinching." "Thank you," Evelyn managed. "Don't thank me. It's not a compliment. Women with balls end up dead in our world." "Then maybe it's time for a different world," she shot back before she could stop herself. Victor's eyebrows rose. Then he laughed again. "I like her. She's either very brave or very stupid." "Both," Min-jae said dryly. "It's terrifying." They left the restaurant with the deal intact and no bloodshed. Evelyn didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until they were back in the car. "You did it," she said. "You negotiated instead of fighting. Don't celebrate yet. Victor will test the boundaries, see if I really meant it about arbitration first. But you didn't kill him.
Not tonight. Tomorrow might be different. Minji, I'm joking. His hand found hers. Mostly. Back at the penthouse, adrenaline caught up with both of them. Minjae poured whiskey they didn't drink. Evelyn paced the living room trying to process everything that had happened. That was the most terrifying thing I've ever done, she said finally. You held up better than some of my men. I was faking it. So was I. Minjae caught her mid-pace, pulling her against him. You were right about finding another way. It worked. This time. This time is all we have. We'll worry about next time when it comes. They made it to the bedroom in a tangle of desperate kisses and fumbling hands. Fear and relief transformed into something physical, urgent, necessary. Minjae stripped her clothes like they were on fire, mouth and hands everywhere at once. Evelyn gave as good as she got, nails raking down his back, teeth catching his lip hard enough to draw blood. It wasn't gentle or romantic. It was raw and messy and real. Two people who'd walked through danger together and needed to prove they were still alive. Afterward, they lay twisted in sheets, breathing hard, covered in sweat and bite marks. I love you, Minjae said into the darkness, even though it's the stupidest thing I've ever done. I love you too, for the same reason. We're a disaster. Probably. But we're our disaster. Evelyn turned to face him, tracing the dragon tattoo on his chest. Promise me something. What? That we'll keep trying, to be better, to build something real instead of just surviving. I promise. His hand covered hers. As long as you promise to keep calling me on my bullshit. Deal. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, the future uncertain but facing it together. Morning came with Minjae's phone ringing at 6 a.m. He answered with a string of Korean that sounded increasingly angry. Evelyn sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. What's wrong? Minjae's face had gone pale. Victor's dead. Shot outside his apartment 3 hours ago. Her stomach dropped. What? Someone killed him. Professional hit, multiple shooters. Minjae was already getting dressed, moving with controlled fury. Every Bratva cell in the city is going to think I did it. But you didn't. Doesn't matter. We signed a deal yesterday. He's dead today. They'll see it as me eliminating competition while pretending to negotiate. Then tell them the truth. They won't believe me. Why would they? He grabbed his jacket. This was a setup. Someone wanted Victor dead and wanted me to take the blame. Who? I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out. He stopped at the door, turning back to her. Stay here. Don't leave the penthouse. Don't talk to anyone. Minjae, please, Evelyn. If the Kozlovs come after me, they'll come after you too. I need you safe. He left before she could argue. Evelyn sat in the empty penthouse and tried not to think about all the ways this could end badly. Hours passed. Minjae sent brief texts, still handling it and don't worry and love you, but no real information. By afternoon, Evelyn was climbing the walls. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Against every instinct, she answered. Mrs. Kang. The voice was female, cultured, familiar. This is Catherine Park. I believe we need to talk. Evelyn's blood ran cold. How did you get this number? I have resources. Listen carefully. Victor Kozlov's death wasn't random. It was orchestrated. By who? Me. Catherine's voice was calm, matter of fact. I paid professionals to kill him and frame your husband for it. By tomorrow, the Kozlovs will have started a war that will destroy everything Minjae has built. Evelyn couldn't breathe. Why are you telling me this? Because you still have time to walk away, to save yourself before it all comes crashing down. Minjae destroyed my evidence, but he can't stop bullets. The Kozlovs will kill him, and if you're standing next to him when it happens, they'll kill you too. You're insane. I'm determined. There's a difference. Catherine paused. I'm giving you one chance, Evelyn. Leave now. Disappear. I'll make sure you have money, protection, a new identity. All you have to do is walk away and let justice happen. Justice? You murdered an innocent man to frame my husband. Victor Kozlov wasn't innocent. He was a brutal criminal who deserved what he got. But yes, I used his death to destroy the man who killed my husband. I call that justice.
Evelyn's hands shook. I'm not leaving him. Then you're a fool. And you'll die a fool's death. The line went dead. Evelyn stared at her phone, mind racing. Catherine had orchestrated Victor's death. The Kozlovs would blame Min Jae. War was coming, and Min Jae had no idea who his real enemy was. She tried calling him, got voicemail, sent texts that showed delivered but not read. Security wouldn't let her leave the penthouse without Min Jae's authorization. Evelyn paced like a caged animal, trying to figure out how to warn him. Her phone buzzed. Text from Catherine. TikTok, Mrs. Kang. Your husband has maybe 6 hours before the Kozlovs find him. I hope he's worth dying for. Evelyn threw the phone across the room and screamed in frustration. Then she took a breath and started thinking strategically. If she couldn't get to Min Jae, she needed to get information to him. And if security wouldn't let her leave, she needed to become someone they couldn't refuse. She called the head of Min Jae's security team directly. I need you to authorize my exit, she said without preamble. Mrs. Kang. Mr. Kang specifically said, "Whoa." I know what he said, but I have information about who really killed Victor Kozlov, information that will save his life. So either you authorize my exit right now, or you explain to him why you let his wife get shot because you were following outdated orders. Silence. Then, where are you going? To save my husband. The security guard's jaw was tight. Against my better judgment, but if anything happens to you, it won't, because you're coming with me. 20 minutes later, Evelyn sat in the back of an armored SUV with 4 security personnel, heading toward the warehouse district where Min Jae was supposedly meeting with Kozlov family representatives. She'd tried calling him 6 more times. No answer. Either he was in a situation where he couldn't talk, or something had already gone wrong. The SUV pulled up 2 blocks from the Target warehouse. The head of security, a man named Marcus who looked like he could break concrete with his bare hands, turned to face her. This is as close as we get without walking into a potential firefight, he said. You should stay in the car. Not happening. Mrs. Kang, my husband is in there possibly walking into an ambush. I'm not sitting in a car while that happens. Marcus's expression suggested he wanted to argue, but knew it was pointless. Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say. If I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. They approached the warehouse carefully, Marcus and his team moving with military precision. Evelyn's heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. The warehouse door was slightly open, not a good sign. Marcus held up a fist. Everyone stopped. He gestured 2 men forward to scout. They disappeared inside. 30 seconds passed like hours. Then one of the scouts stumbled back out, face pale. You need to see this. Marcus moved forward. Evelyn followed before he could stop her. Inside the warehouse was a bloodbath, 6 bodies on the floor, all in suits that marked them as Kozlov family. Bullet wounds, professional execution, and in the center of the carnage, standing over the last body with a gun in his hand, was Kang Min Jae. He looked up when they entered, expression completely empty. It's not what it looks like, he said. But Evelyn could see it was exactly what it looked like. Her husband had just killed 6 men, and the Kozlov family's war against him had officially begun. Her husband had just killed 6 men, and the Kozlov family's war against him had officially begun. Evelyn's breath came in short, sharp gasps as she took in the scene. Blood pooled on the concrete floor, spreading in dark tributaries between the bodies. The metallic smell hit her like a fist to the stomach. Min Jae stood in the center of it all, gun still in his hand, his white shirt splattered with red that wasn't his own. I said it's not what it looks like, he repeated, voice flat and dead. Marcus moved forward carefully, weapon raised. Mr. Kang, we need to leave. Now. They were already dead when I got here. Min Jae set the gun down on a nearby crate, hands moving slowly so no one would mistake his intentions. This is a setup. Someone killed them and put the weapon in my hand while I was unconscious. Evelyn saw it then. The slight sway in his posture, the way his pupils were dilated wrong. You're drugged. Sedative, injected from behind when I walked in. He touched the back of his neck, fingers coming away with a small smear of blood. I woke up 2 minutes ago holding the gun with 6 bodies around me. Catherine, Evelyn said. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. She killed Victor to start the war.
Now she's framing you for killing his family members to make sure it never stops. Min Jae's eyes sharpened despite the drugs in his system. How do you know about Catherine? She called me, offered me a way out if I left you to die. And you came here instead. Of course I did, you idiot. You're my husband. Something that might have been a smile flickered across his face. Then Marcus's radio crackled with urgent Korean. Min Jae's expression went completely cold. How many? He asked in English. 15 vehicles, maybe 60 men, armed, 2 minutes out. The Kozlovs. Min Jae looked at Evelyn. They knew I'd be here. Someone told them. We need to leave, Marcus said. Back exit, now.
They ran. Evelyn's legs burned as they sprinted through the warehouse, Min Jae stumbling occasionally from whatever drug was still in his system. Marcus and his team moved like a trained unit, weapons up, clearing corners. They burst through the back door into an alley just as gunfire erupted from the front of the building. The sound was deafening, nothing like movies, sharp cracks that made Evelyn's ears ring. This way! Marcus shoved them toward the SUV, waiting at the alley's mouth. They were 20 feet away when the first Kozlov vehicle screamed around the corner, blocking their escape. Men poured out, all carrying automatic weapons that looked military grade. Marcus and his team returned fire. The noise was apocalyptic. Evelyn hit the ground behind a dumpster, hands over her ears, watching her husband's security force engage in a firefight she'd only seen in action movies. Min Jae dragged her further behind cover, his body shielding hers. Stay down. What about you? I'll be fine. A bullet pinged off the dumpster 6 inches from her head. Min Jae cursed and pulled her tighter against him. The fight lasted maybe 90 seconds but felt like hours. When it was over, 3 of Marcus's men were down and the Kozlov shooters had retreated, leaving 2 of their own bleeding on the pavement. We can't stay here, Marcus said, pressing a hand to his shoulder where blood was seeping through his jacket. They'll regroup and come back with more. Where do we go? Evelyn asked. Min Jae's jaw was tight. Somewhere they won't expect, somewhere Catherine doesn't know about. They piled into what remained of their security detail. 1 working SUV, 4 people including Evelyn and Min Jae. Marcus drove like he was competing in a death race, weaving through Brooklyn streets while checking the rear view every 5 seconds. Min Jae was on his phone, making calls in rapid Korean. Evelyn caught enough to understand he was calling in favors, mobilizing resources, preparing for war. Where are we going? She asked again. Queens, safe house my brother set up before he died. Min Jae's voice was hollow. Only 3 people knew about it, Ji-hoon, me, and his wife. Catherine knew? Not unless he told her, and he wouldn't have. It was his escape plan if everything went wrong. The safe house was a modest 2-story in a neighborhood that could have been anywhere in Middle America. Chain-link fences, small yards, the kind of place where no one asked questions as long as you didn't make noise. Min Jae had a key hidden under a fake rock that would have been laughable if their situation wasn't so dire. Inside, the furniture was covered in sheets. Dust coated every surface. It looked like no one had been here in years. Ji-hoon bought this place under a shell company, Min Jae said, locking the door behind them. Paid cash. No paper trail connecting it to the family. Marcus immediately started securing the perimeter. The other guard, a young guy named Chen who looked barely out of his 20s, checked the windows while trying not to stare at the blood on his hands from the firefight. Evelyn sank onto a sheet-covered couch, adrenaline crash hitting her like a truck. Her whole body shook. She pressed her hands together to stop the trembling, but it didn't help. Min Jae knelt in front of her, taking her face in both hands. Look at me. You're okay. You're safe. 3 people died back there. I know. They died because of us. Because I insisted on coming. They died because Catherine orchestrated this whole thing. None of this is your fault. How is it not? If I'd just stayed at the penthouse, then I'd probably be dead right now. You warned Marcus. You got them to bring backup. You saved my life. His thumbs brushed away tears she didn't realize were falling. So don't you dare take responsibility for what Catherine did. Evelyn's breath hitched. What do we do now? We end this. Permanently. Marcus appeared in the doorway. We've got a problem. Catherine just went public. He held up his phone, showing a news website. The headline made Evelyn's stomach drop. Korean crime lord massacres Russian family members in Brooklyn warehouse. Below it was grainy security footage, cleverly edited to show Min Jae entering the warehouse, then later standing over the bodies with a gun. No context, no indication he'd been drugged and set up. "She's forcing my hand," Min Jae said quietly, "making it impossible for me to negotiate or find peaceful solutions. Either I fight the Kozlovs and probably die, or I surrender to law enforcement and spend the rest of my life in prison." "There has to be a third option," Evelyn said. "If there is, I don't see it." Evelyn's mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Catherine had planned this too well. Every avenue of escape led to Min Jae's destruction. Unless...
"What if we give her what she wants?" Evelyn said slowly. Min Jae's eyes sharpened. "What do you mean?" "She wants justice for Ji-hoon. She wants you to pay for killing your brother. What if we give her that?" "I'm not turning myself in." "Not to the police. To her." Evelyn grabbed his hands. "What if you confessed? What if you met with her, admitted what you did, explained why, and asked for her forgiveness?" "She'll never forgive me." "Maybe not, but she might accept something else. Compensation, restitution, a way to honor Ji-hoon's memory." Min Jae shook his head. "You don't understand. She doesn't want money or monuments. She wants me to suffer the way she suffered." "Then give her that too. Show her you have suffered. Show her what killing your brother cost you." "Why would she care?" "Because she loved him. And if Ji-hoon loved you, if he saw something worth saving in his little brother, then maybe she can too."
Min Jae pulled away, standing and pacing to the window. "You're asking me to make myself completely vulnerable to a woman who's orchestrated multiple murders to destroy me. I'm asking you to try something other than violence. One more time. And if it doesn't work? If she kills me the moment I walk through the door," Evelyn stood crossing to him, "then at least you tried. At least you chose something different than what you've always chosen." He stared out at the quiet suburban street, jaw working. "This is insane. So is everything else we've done. You realize if this goes wrong, you'll be a widow. And if it goes right, maybe we actually have a future." Min Jae turned to face her fully. "Why are you fighting so hard for me, after everything you know I've done?" "Because I love you, and because I think the man you could become is worth saving." Evelyn took his hands. "You killed your brother, and it broke something in you. You've been trying to bury that pain under violence and control ever since, but it's still there. I can see it every time someone mentions his name." "What's your point?" "My point is that you can't move forward until you deal with what's behind you. Catherine represents everything you've been running from. Face her. Face what you did. And maybe you can finally let yourself heal." Min Jae's breath came ragged. "You make it sound simple." "It's not. It's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. But I'll be with you, every step." He pulled her into a kiss that tasted like fear and desperation and something that might have been hope. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right," he said. "No weapons. No backup waiting to ambush her. Just me, walking in and taking whatever consequences she decides I deserve." "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." "Not negotiable. Where you go, I go." "Evelyn, we're partners, remember? Or were you lying about that too?" His laugh was strained. "You're going to get us both killed." "Probably, but we'll die trying to do the right thing. That's more than most people in your world can say." Min Jae looked at Marcus. "Set up a meeting with Catherine Park. Neutral location. Tell her I want to talk about Ji-hoon." "Sir, that's..." "Suicide, I know. Do it anyway." Marcus made the call while Min Jae and Evelyn sat together on the dusty couch, hands intertwined, waiting to hear if Catherine would even agree to meet. She did. 2 hours later, they stood outside a small cafe in Manhattan, the same neighborhood where Evelyn had first met Min Jae for dinner before their wedding. The irony wasn't lost on her. Catherine sat at a table in the back, looking calm and composed like she hadn't orchestrated multiple murders in the past week. She stood when they approached. "You came," she said. "I half expected you to send assassins instead." "I'm done with assassins," Min Jae said. "I'm done with all of it." "Convenient timing, now that you're cornered." "Yes, now that I'm cornered." He gestured to the empty chairs. "Can we sit?" Catherine's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. They sat, The three of them around a small table meant for casual coffee dates, not confrontations about fratricide and revenge. "Why am I here?" Catherine asked. "Because I owe you an explanation, and an apology, and probably a lot more than that, but those are the only things I can give you right now." "I don't want your apology." "I know, but I'm going to give it anyway." Minjae's hands were steady on the table, but Evelyn could see the tension in his shoulders. 5 years ago, I killed my brother. Not in self-defense, not in a moment of passion. I planned it, executed it, and covered it up because I believed it was necessary to protect the organization. I know all this. I've spent 5 years documenting it. Then you know the facts, but you don't know what it cost me. Minjae's voice dropped. Ji-hoon was the only person in my family who ever loved me unconditionally. My father beat me. My mother abandoned me. But Ji-hoon looked out for me, taught me, tried to show me there was a better way than violence. And you killed him for it. I killed him because I was too broken to understand what he was offering. I killed him because I'd been trained since childhood to see any threat to the organization as a threat to survival. I killed him because... His voice cracked. Because I was a coward who couldn't imagine a life different from what I'd always known. Catherine's expression didn't soften. You expect me to forgive you because you feel guilty? No, I expect you to do whatever you need to do to find peace. If that means killing me, then do it. If it means sending me to prison, I'll turn myself in. If it means I spend the rest of my life paying restitution to causes Ji-hoon cared about, I'll do that too. Why now? Why offer this after fighting me for 5 years? Minjae glanced at Evelyn. Because someone showed me that the man I've been doesn't have to be the man I am, that I can choose differently, that I can try to build something instead of just destroying everything around me. Your wife. Yes. Catherine turned to Evelyn. And you love him, knowing what he's done? I love who he's trying to become, Evelyn said carefully. I won't pretend the past doesn't exist or that he doesn't have blood on his hands. But I've seen him choose restraint over violence. I've seen him try to negotiate instead of fight. I've seen him question everything he was raised to believe. That doesn't absolve him. No, nothing absolves murder, but it means he's capable of change, and change means maybe the rest of his life doesn't have to be defined by his worst moment. Catherine was quiet for a long time. A waitress approached to take their order and retreated quickly when she saw the tension at the table. Ji-hoon believed in redemption, Catherine said finally. He believed people could change if they wanted to badly enough. It's why he was working with prosecutors. He thought he could help people leave the criminal life and start over. He was right, Minjae said. He was right about everything. I just couldn't see it until it was too late. If I let you live, if I stop trying to destroy you, what changes? You go back to running your organization. You go back to violence and crime. Nothing actually gets better. I'm already changing it. Moving operations toward legitimate business, reducing violence, building exit strategies for people who want out. Minjae leaned forward. Give me 5 years. If I haven't significantly shifted the organization toward legal operations by then, turn over whatever evidence you have. I won't fight it. 5 years, Catherine repeated. And what do I get in return? A foundation in Ji-hoon's name, fully funded. Focused on helping people escape organized crime and rebuild their lives. Everything he wanted to do when he was alive. Catherine's breath caught. You'd do that? I'd do anything to honor him. I can't bring him back. I can't undo what I did, but I can try to make his vision real. Tears shone in Catherine's eyes. She blinked them back angrily. This doesn't make us even. I know. I still hate you. I don't blame you. But Ji-hoon would want his death to mean something more than just revenge. She wiped at her eyes. He'd want it to save people, help people, make the world he dreamed about possible. Then let me try to do that. Let me spend the rest of my life trying to be the man he believed I could be. The silence stretched. Evelyn held her breath. Finally, Catherine nodded. 5 years? You have 5 years to prove you're serious. I'll hold on to my evidence. And if you backslide, if you go back to the violence and murder, I'll destroy you without hesitation. Deal. They shook hands across the table, two people bound by love for the same man and grief that would never fully heal. What about the Kozlovs? Catherine asked. They think you killed their family members. I'll handle that, but I need you to give me the evidence that I didn't. Security footage from the warehouse. Whatever proof you have that it was a setup. Catherine pulled out a USB drive. Already prepared. The full footage shows 3 masked individuals entering the warehouse before you, killing the 6 men, drugging you, and leaving. Their faces are obscured, but their builds and movements don't match anyone in your organization. Min-jae took the drive carefully, like it was a live grenade. You were always going to give this to me. I wanted to see if you'd come here to grovel or to threaten. If you'd threatened, I would have kept it and watched the Kozlovs tear you apart. Catherine stood. But you didn't threaten. You apologized. You offered restitution, so I'm giving you a chance. Thank you. Don't thank me. Prove you deserve it. She left without another word, disappearing into the Manhattan crowd. Evelyn let out a breath she'd been holding for what felt like hours. That actually worked. Don't celebrate yet. We still have to convince the Kozlovs I didn't kill their people. How do we do that? Min-jae looked at the USB drive. Carefully. Very carefully. The meeting with the Kozlov family took place 2 days later in the same restaurant where Min-jae had negotiated with Victor. This time, it was Victor's younger brother Alexei at the head of the table, a man in his 40s with cold eyes and a reputation for cruelty that made Victor look gentle by comparison. Min-jae came alone despite every instinct screaming at him to bring an army. Evelyn waited outside with Marcus and what remained of their security team, watching through tinted windows and praying this didn't end in another bloodbath. The conversation was tense. Alexei accused Min-jae of murdering his brother and 6 family members. Min-jae presented the USB drive. They watched the footage together on a laptop someone produced. Evelyn couldn't hear what was being said, but she saw Alexei's expression shift from fury to confusion to cold calculation. He watched the footage 3 times, zooming in on the masked figures, analyzing their movements. Then he stood up, offered Min-jae his hand, and they shook. When Min-jae emerged from the restaurant 40 minutes later, he looked exhausted but alive. What happened? Evelyn demanded the moment he was in the SUV. Alexei believes me. The footage was clear enough that he could see it was a professional setup. He's calling off the war and redirecting his anger toward finding whoever actually killed his people. Did you tell him it was Catherine? No, let him chase ghosts. Catherine's out of the game now, no reason to put her back in play. So it's over? The war? The revenge? All of it? For now. Min-jae pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair. For now, it's over. The next 6 months passed in a blur of transformation. Min-jae kept his word to Catherine. He established the Ji-hoon Kong Foundation with an initial endowment of $50 million, dedicated to helping people leave organized crime and rebuild their lives. Catherine served on the board, channeling her grief into something constructive. He began the slow, delicate process of legitimizing his organization's operations. Some people resisted, some left. A few had to be dealt with more firmly. But gradually the empire built on violence started shifting toward something that could exist in daylight. It wasn't clean, it wasn't easy. There were setbacks and compromises, and moments where Min-jae slipped back into old patterns. But Evelyn was there for all of it, calling him on his bullshit like she'd promised, refusing to let him take the easy path of violence when harder options existed. Evelyn went back to Columbia, finished her degree in economics with a focus on organizational transformation. Her thesis analyzed criminal enterprises that successfully transitioned to legitimate business, case studies in change that she was living in real time. Her mother's cancer went into remission. The experimental treatment Min-jae had paid for worked better than anyone expected. Evelyn's father found work again, something modest but honest. They never spoke about how close they'd come to losing everything. Some truths were too heavy to carry in conversation. On their first anniversary, Min-jae took Evelyn back to the Maldives. The same resort, the same villa where they'd first stopped pretending their marriage was just business. I have something for you, he said one evening as they sat on the deck watching the sun set over impossible blue water. He handed her a legal document. Evelyn scanned it, breath-catching. You're transferring ownership of the organization to a board, she said. Effective immediately. I'll still have influence and a seat at the table, but I won't have unilateral control anymore. Decisions will be made collectively, legally, with oversight and accountability. Min-jae, this is... The only way forward. Jihoon was right. One man with absolute power always becomes corrupted by it. I've been that man long enough. Evelyn set the documents aside and kissed him hard. I'm proud of you. Don't be proud yet. I still have years of work ahead. Then I'll be proud of you trying. They made love as the sun disappeared below the horizon, the villa lights coming on automatically, the ocean whispering against the stilts below. Everything felt full circle and brand new at the same time. Later, wrapped in sheets that probably cost more than Evelyn used to make in a month, Min-jae traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. Evelyn's stomach clenched. What? I'm selling the penthouse. Why? Because it's a monument to the man I used to be. Cold, impersonal, designed to intimidate. He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. I want us to find a home together. Something we choose. Something that's ours, not mine. Where are you thinking? I don't know. Maybe upstate. Somewhere with trees and quiet. Somewhere we could raise... He stopped. Raise what? Min-jae's hand settled on her stomach, warm and possessive. A family. Eventually. If you want. Evelyn covered his hand with hers. I want. Not right now, but someday. Someday, he agreed. When we've built something stable enough to bring kids into. That's going to take years. Then we have time. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, the future uncertain but facing it together. 2 years after their wedding, the transformation was undeniable. Min-jae's organization had divested from most criminal operations, reinvesting in tech startups, real estate development, and green energy. The Jihoon Kang Foundation had helped over 300 people leave organized crime and start legitimate careers. There were still problems, still violence occasionally, still people who saw Min-jae's past and assumed his present, but the trajectory was clear. He was becoming something different than what he'd been. Catherine attended their second anniversary party, held at the foundation's headquarters. She and Min-jae would never be friends, but they'd found a way to coexist. She could see Jihoon's vision coming to life, and that was enough. He would have liked you, Catherine told Evelyn during a quiet moment. Jihoon? Yes, he always said his brother needed someone brave enough to challenge him, someone who wouldn't accept violence as the only answer. Catherine's smile was sad but genuine. You're exactly what Min-jae needed. I'm what we both needed, Evelyn corrected. He saved me too. How? Showed me I was stronger than I thought, that I could survive impossible situations, that I could choose love, even when it didn't make sense. Evelyn looked across the room to where Min-jae was talking with Foundation staff, smiling in a way that still surprised her. We saved each other. 3 years in, Evelyn discovered she was pregnant. She told Min-jae at their house upstate, a renovated farmhouse with land and gardens and enough space to breathe. He cried when she showed him the positive test, which might have been the second time she'd seen him cry. The first had been at Jihoon's grave when he'd finally let himself grieve properly. Are you sure you want this? He asked, hands shaking as he held the test. Want a child with me? I'm sure. Are you? Terrified, but yes. Their daughter was born on a spring morning, perfect and healthy, and completely oblivious to the complicated world she'd entered. They named her Hope, a name that meant something to both of them after everything they'd survived. Min-jae held her for the first time with hands that had killed and destroyed and hurt so many people, and Evelyn watched him transform again. Watched violence give way to tenderness. Watched a man who'd been raised in brutality choose gentleness. She'll never know that version of me, he said quietly, while Hope slept in his arms. The man I was before you. Maybe that's okay. Maybe people get to have second chances. Do they deserve them? I don't know, but I know you've earned yours. 5 years after their wedding, the deadline Catherine had set, Min-jae's organization was 70% legitimate. The remaining 30% was being phased out carefully to avoid creating power vacuums that other criminals would fill violently. Catherine showed up at their house unannounced one autumn afternoon. Evelyn invited her in, made tea, tried not to show her nervousness. I'm returning this, Catherine said, setting a sealed envelope on the kitchen table. The evidence I kept, all of it. Min-jae stared at the envelope. Why? Because you kept your promise. The foundation is thriving. Your organization has changed. You've changed. She paused. And because holding on to this was holding on to hate. I'm tired of hating you. I don't expect forgiveness. Good. Because I'm not offering it, but I am offering peace. The chance to move forward without destroying each other. I'll take it. They shook hands across the table where Evelyn and Min-jae ate breakfast every morning, where they planned their future, where they taught Hope to eat solid food. After Catherine left, Min-jae took the envelope to the fireplace and burned it without opening it. You should have looked, Evelyn said. Made sure it was really the evidence. Doesn't matter. If she kept copies, she'll use them if I give her reason to. If she didn't, then it's truly over. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. Either way, I choose to trust her. When did you become such an optimist? When I married a woman crazy enough to believe I could change. 7 years after their wedding, Evelyn stood in front of Columbia's graduating class and delivered the commencement speech. She talked about impossible choices and the courage to choose love over fear, about transformation and second chances, and the slow, difficult work of becoming better than who you were. Min-jae sat in the audience with Hope on his lap, both of them beaming with pride. After the ceremony, they walked through Central Park, the same park where Evelyn had met Catherine and learned the truth about Ji-hoon, the same park where she'd made the choice to stay instead of run. Do you ever regret it? Min-jae asked while Hope chased pigeons. Choosing me? Every day, Evelyn said honestly. And then I wake up next to you and remember why I made the choice anyway. That's not very romantic.
Romance is easy. This is real. She took his hand. Real is harder and messier and more complicated.
But it's ours. Hope ran back to them, demanding to be picked up. Min-jae lifted her easily, settling her on his shoulders while she shrieked with delight. They walked home through the city Min-jae used to control through fear, now just another family among millions. Anonymous and normal and completely content with the quiet life they'd built from the ashes of who they used to be. 10 years after their wedding, the organization was fully legitimate. Min-jae served as CEO of Kang Enterprises, a holding company with investments in technology, sustainable energy, and urban development. The criminal empire that had defined his family for 3 generations had been transformed into something legal and ethical and profitable. The Ji-hoon Kang Foundation had helped over 2,000 people leave organized crime. Catherine ran it full-time, channeling all her energy into making her late husband's dream real. Evelyn published a book about organizational transformation, using anonymous case studies that were thinly veiled versions of Min-jae's journey. It became required reading in business schools and criminal justice programs. Hope started kindergarten, completely unaware that her father had once been one of the most feared men in New York's underworld. On their 10th anniversary, Min-jae and Evelyn returned to the same restaurant where they had first met before their wedding. The private dining room looked exactly the same, dark wood, soft lighting, table set for 2. Do you remember what you said to me that night? Evelyn asked. I said a lot of things. You said you couldn't offer me love, only protection and loyalty and freedom. Min-jae's hand found hers across the table. I was wrong about that. You were wrong about a lot of things. Name 3. That violence was the only answer, that you couldn't change, that I'd want to leave once I knew the truth about you. I was spectacularly wrong about all of those. Yes, you were. Evelyn squeezed his hand, but you figured it out eventually. With your help. We helped each other. They ordered food they barely touched, too busy talking about the future, about expanding the foundation internationally, about maybe having another child, about the house they were building near the ocean where they could retire someday, about all the years still ahead of them. As they left the restaurant, Evelyn thought about the terrified girl who'd walked down an aisle toward a stranger 3 weeks before their wedding. That girl had been desperate and broken and convinced she was selling herself with no way out. She'd been wrong too. She hadn't sold herself. She'd invested in something impossible, the belief that people could change if they wanted to badly enough. That love could exist in the darkest places. That redemption was possible even for those with blood on their hands. Min-jae had been a monster who'd killed his own brother and ruled through fear. Now he was a husband and father and businessman working every day to build something better than what he'd inherited. The transformation hadn't been clean or easy or complete. He still had moments where the old Min Jae surfaced, cold and calculating and dangerous. But those moments were rare now, and Evelyn was always there to call him back. They walked through the city hand in hand, two people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and somehow made it work anyway. "I love you," Min Jae said, as they waited for a light to change. "I know." "That's it? No, I love you too?" Evelyn looked up at him, this man who'd terrified her and saved her and changed everything about her life. "You already know I love you. I chose you when I could have walked away. I stayed when Catherine gave me an out. I built a life with you when everyone said I was crazy." So? "So you don't need me to say the words. You have the proof." The light changed. They crossed the street together, heading home to the daughter waiting with a babysitter and the life they'd built from ruins. And if anyone had told Evelyn 10 years ago that she'd find happiness with a Korean mafia boss who'd murdered his own brother, she would have thought they were insane. But that was before she learned that people were more than their worst moments. That change was possible if you wanted it badly enough. That love could exist in the spaces between violence and peace, between past and future, between who you were and who you chose to become. Min Jae had chosen to become someone better. Evelyn had chosen to believe he could. And together, they'd built something neither of them could have created alone. Not a fairy tale, not a love story without complications, but a real partnership between two broken people who'd found a way to be whole together. And that was more than either of them had dared to hope for when they'd stood at an altar and promised forever to a stranger. The Korean mafia boss who once ruled through fear alone had discovered something stronger than power. And Evelyn Carter, the desperate girl who'd sold herself to save her family, had found the courage to choose love even when it made no sense. Years later, when Hope asked how her parents met, they told her a simplified version: a marriage arrangement between families, a slow discovery of genuine affection, a decision to build a life together. They didn't tell her about the violence or the murder or the revenge plot that almost destroyed them. Those stories belonged to the past, a past they'd survived but no longer lived in. Instead, they focused on the future, on the family they'd built, on the foundation helping thousands of people escape the life Min Jae had left behind, on the legitimate business empire that proved transformation was possible, on the quiet moments of joy that made all the suffering worthwhile. And late at night, when Hope was asleep and the house was quiet, Min Jae would pull Evelyn close and whisper the same words he'd said on their first anniversary. "You ruined every plan I ever had." And Evelyn would smile and respond the same way she always did. "And you saved me." Because that was the truth they'd built their marriage on, not the fantasy of love at first sight, but the reality of two people choosing each other every single day despite and because of their broken pieces. The mafia boss and the desperate bride. The monster and the woman who believed he could change. The impossible partnership that somehow became the most real thing in both their lives. And as the years passed and their hair grayed and their daughter grew and the world kept turning, they held on to each other and the life they'd fought so hard to build. Not perfect, never perfect, but theirs. And that was enough.